Have you ever wondered what it would be like to sit at a banquet table in ancient Rome, or share a meal with Egyptian pharaohs, or taste the very same dishes that sustained civilizations thousands of years ago? It's a thought that captures the imagination, the flavors, the aromas, the stories simmering in every pot. Food is one of humanity's oldest connectors, a thread woven through time that links us to our ancestors in the most intimate way possible, through shared sustenance. And what if I told you that you don't need a time machine to experience these ancient culinary wonders, that the very same recipes enjoyed by people living millennia ago can be recreated right in your own kitchen, with ingredients you might already have on hand? This journey we're about to take isn't just about cooking, it's about unlocking edible time capsules. We're diving into 35 ancient foods you can make today, dishes that have stood the test of time not just as historical artifacts, but as genuinely delicious, satisfying meals. From the honey-sweetened breads baked in prehistoric ovens to the spiced stews that fueled empires, these recipes tell a story of innovation, survival, and the universal human desire to gather, celebrate, and nourish one another. You'll be amazed by how inventive our ancestors were, transforming simple, local ingredients into meals that were both practical and profoundly meaningful. So join me as we step into the kitchens of the past and bring their flavors vibrantly into the present. This isn't a dry history lesson, it's an invitation to play, to explore, and to taste living history. Whether you're an experienced home cook or someone who just loves a good story, there's something here to inspire you. Get ready to discover how easy it is to connect with ancient cultures through the universal language of food. And who knows, you might just find your new favorite recipe has been waiting for you, not in some trendy cookbook, but in the annals of history itself. Our first stop on this delicious journey takes us to the Fertile Crescent, the very cradle of civilization, where one of humanity's earliest staple foods was born: Mesopotamian barley bread. Long before wheat became the grain of choice for most breads, the ancient Sumerians and Akkadians were cultivating barley in the rich soil between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This hardy grain was incredibly resilient, able to tolerate the salty soil and unpredictable climate of the region, which made it the absolute cornerstone of their diet. It was so fundamental to their existence that it was even used as a form of currency. Workers on the great ziggurats were often paid in rations of barley. This humble grain truly built empires from the ground up. The recipe itself is a beautiful study in simplicity, showcasing how our ancestors made magnificent use of very few ingredients. To make your own, you would need just 3 things: freshly ground barley flour, water, and a pinch of salt. That's it. There's no yeast, no sophisticated leavening agents. This results in a dense, hearty, and slightly nutty flatbread, more similar to a cracker or a thick lavash than the fluffy, risen loaves we're accustomed to today. The process began by mixing the barley flour with water to form a stiff dough, which was then shaped into round, flat discs. Now, here's where the story gets truly communal. Most households didn't have their own ovens. Instead, baking was a social event. These shaped loaves would be taken to a neighborhood baker who operated a large, communal clay oven known as a tinyaru. Imagine the scene: a bustling corner of the city where the air was thick with the incredible smell of baking bread, a place where people gathered, shared news, and connected while their daily bread baked in the shared heat. The dough discs were often slapped directly onto the hot inner walls of these domed ovens, cooking quickly into delicious, toasty rounds. To truly savor this bread as an ancient Mesopotamian would, you wouldn't just eat it plain. Dive into history by drizzling your warm barley bread with golden, wild honey, or by topping it with a handful of sweet, chewy dates. These were luxuries available to them, and the combination of the savory, grainy bread with the burst of natural sweetness is a flavor experience that has literally stood the test of time. It's a profound yet simple way to taste the very energy that fueled the world's first great cities. From the solid sustenance of Mesopotamian bread, we turn to a liquid that was every bit as vital to an ancient civilization, the beer of Egypt. If barley was the staff of life in Mesopotamia, in the land of the pharaohs, beer was the lifeblood. This wasn't merely a recreational beverage, it was a daily nutritional cornerstone, consumed by everyone from the lowliest laborer to the highest priest, and even served to children. It was a currency, an offering to the gods, and medicine. The ancient Egyptians were so renowned for their brewing that the Greeks later called them the most beer-loving of all peoples. Their beer, known as heket or tenemu, was quite different from the crisp, frothy pints we know today. It was primarily made from emmer wheat, an ancient grain with a tougher husk than modern varieties, and it was often flavored with dates for a touch of natural sweetness and spices like coriander for complexity. The process began by partially baking loaves of emmer wheat and barley, which created a rich, malty base. These beer bread loaves were then crumbled into a large vat of water and left to ferment naturally using wild yeast present in the air. This created a thick, porridge-like substance that was only lightly alcoholic, perhaps around 2 or 3%, and packed with carbohydrates, proteins, and vitamins from the grains. The final product was so unfiltered and packed with sediment that it was typically consumed through straws made of reed or metal to avoid the grainy sludge at the bottom of the drinking jar. Imagine the flavor, a cloudy, nutrient-rich, slightly sour and tangy drink, more like a fermented cereal smoothie than a modern lager. It provided crucial calories and hydration in a safe form, as the fermentation process made the water safer to drink than from the Nile itself. For a fascinating and completely non-alcoholic taste of this history, you can create a simple, modern tribute at home. Gently toast some crushed emmer wheat or spelt berries in a dry pan until they're fragrant and golden. Soak them in cold water for several hours, then strain the liquid. To this, add a handful of mashed dates and a tiny pinch of ground coriander. Chill it thoroughly. The result is a uniquely grainy, slightly sweet and refreshing drink that echoes the foundational flavors of the ancient Egyptian diet, giving you a safe and delicious way to experience a sip of the past. While we often think of the Romans for their architectural marvels and military might, their true power might have actually been stored in clay pots simmering under the Mediterranean sun. This brings us to one of the most defining, and perhaps to our modern palates, challenging flavors of the ancient world, Roman garum. If you've ever wondered what single ingredient could make a Roman chef's heart sing, this was it. Garum was the universal condiment, the ketchup, the soy sauce, and the Worcestershire sauce of the Roman Empire, all rolled into one potent, pungent, and utterly indispensable liquid. The process of making garum was surprisingly simple in its ingredients but required immense patience. It was a classic example of controlled rot, of transforming something inedible into pure culinary gold through fermentation. The recipe, as recorded by writers of the time, called for layering small, whole fish, often anchovies, mackerel, or sardines, with vast quantities of salt in large earthenware jars called amphorae. These jars were then left out in the sun to bake for several months, anywhere from 2 to 3, stirring occasionally. The sun's heat would slowly break down the fish, and the salt would prevent putrefaction, encouraging a process called autolysis, where the fish's own enzymes liquefy its guts. What was left after this long, aromatic wait was a clear, amber-colored liquid that was drained off from the top. This was the precious first-quality garum, known as liquamen. The thick, pasty sludge left at the bottom was called a lek, a cheaper, lower-quality paste used by the poorer classes. Now, the aroma of a garum factory, or satariae, was so notoriously powerful that they were required by law to be located well outside city limits. But the flavor, Romans were absolutely obsessed. They used it in virtually everything from salads and sauces to desserts and even medicinal drinks. It provided that deep, savory, umami punch that could elevate the simplest dish into something complex and extraordinary. A dash of garum could make boiled lentils taste profound and turn a simple stew into a feast. For those curious to taste a piece of this history, you don't need to ferment fish for months in your backyard. The good news is that several modern fish sauces are considered the direct descendants of garum. A high-quality Vietnamese nuoc mam or a Thai nam pla will give you a very close approximation of that ancient Roman flavor profile. For a quick and easy homemade version that captures the spirit of garum without the lengthy process, you can simmer a jar of anchovy fillets in olive oil with a handful of crushed black peppercorns and a few sprigs of fresh oregano over the lowest possible heat on your stovetop for about an hour. Once cooled and strained, this infused oil provides that same salty, savory, deeply umami essence. Drizzle it over roasted vegetables, mix it into a dressing, or add a teaspoon to your next pasta sauce, and you'll be cooking with the ghost of a flavor that once united an empire. Leaving behind the potent, salty depths of Roman garum, we find ourselves stepping into the sun-drenched hills of ancient Greece, where a far more soothing and mystical concoction was being prepared. This brings us to our next ancient food, a beverage that served as both humble sustenance and a sacred portal, Greek kykeon. While the name might not be as instantly recognizable as garum, its role in Greek culture was every bit as profound, bridging the gap between the everyday and the divine. Unlike the complex fermented beers of Egypt, kykeon was deceptively simple at its core. Its base was almost always barley, a grain as vital to the Greeks as it was to the Mesopotamians. The most basic version was little more than barley groats soaked in water or mixed with grated goat's cheese, creating a simple, porridge-like meal for peasants and soldiers, a quick and easy way to get calories on the go. But this is where the ordinary ends and the extraordinary begins. Kykeon's true claim to fame was its central, mystical role in the Eleusinian mysteries, the most secretive and sacred religious rites of the ancient Greek world. For over 2,000 years, initiates would partake in this special brew as a crucial part of a days-long ceremony dedicated to the goddesses Demeter and Persephone, a ritual that promised spiritual awakening and a glimpse into the secrets of the afterlife. The exact recipe for this sacred kykeon is one of history's great lost secrets, tightly guarded by its priesthood on pain of death. Scholars have long debated what gave it its purported transformative properties. Some theories suggest the barley used might have been contaminated with ergot, a fungus that contains compounds similar to LSD, potentially inducing vivid visions. Others propose it was the specific addition of pennyroyal mint, known for its strong, pungent oil that can have mild psychoactive effects. Whatever the precise combination, this was not a casual drink. It was a holy sacrament, a key that unlocked altered states of consciousness and cemented a powerful shared experience for those deemed worthy. You can easily create a comforting, non-psychoactive version of kykeon in your own kitchen that honors its dual nature as both a simple meal and a special beverage. Start by gently toasting a quarter cup of pearl barley in a dry saucepan until it becomes fragrant and takes on a light golden color. Add 3 cups of water, bring it to a boil, then reduce the heat and let it simmer for about 45 minutes until the barley is very soft and the water has become cloudy and starchy. Strain the liquid into a clean pot, pressing on the barley to extract all the goodness. To this warm barley water, stir in a generous tablespoon of honey, and a big handful of fresh mint leaves spearmint is perfect for its gentle sweetness. Let the mint steep for 5 to 10 minutes before straining it out. What you're left with is a wonderfully soothing, slightly creamy and aromatic drink. Sip it warm and you'll understand how this humble combination of grain and herb could feel both nourishing and mystical, a true taste of ancient Greek life that was equally at home in a farmer's field and a holy temple. Leaving the warm Mediterranean behind, we now travel high into the breathtaking Andes Mountains of South America. to uncover one of the most ingenious food preservation techniques ever invented by an ancient civilization, Inca chuño. In this harsh, high-altitude environment where frost could strike any night of the year, the Inca Empire mastered a form of food science so effective it could keep for decades, becoming the backbone that supported their vast armies and thriving cities. This wasn't just a way to save leftovers, it was the technology that fueled an empire. The process itself is a brilliant example of working in harmony with an extreme environment. It begins with the humble potato, which the Incas domesticated into thousands of unique varieties. To make chuño, they would carefully spread small, starchy potatoes, often a specific type called papa amarga or bitter potato, onto the frozen ground on a clear, cold night. The intense frost of the high Andes, which can plunge to well below freezing, would freeze the potatoes solid. Then, with the rising sun the next day, family members would walk barefoot over the potatoes, gently pressing down to squeeze out the water that had frozen within the cells and to break down the potato's structure. This cycle of freezing and thawing wasn't a one-time event. For several days, they would repeat this ritual, leaving the potatoes out to freeze at night, then trampling them underfoot during the day under the powerful Andean sun. With each cycle, the potatoes would lose more moisture, gradually transforming from a plump tuber into a lightweight, rock-hard, and desiccated nugget. The final product, a white version known as chuño blanco or a darker type called tanta, was so devoid of moisture that it could be stored for 10, 20, or even 50 years without spoiling. It was a calorie-dense, lightweight, and portable superfood that allowed the Inca to maintain storehouses full of emergency supplies all across their empire, ensuring no one would starve during a poor harvest or a long siege. To bring this ancient technology into your kitchen, you don't need an Andean mountaintop. While modern freeze-drying is a complex machine process, the spirit of chuño lives on in many Andean communities today. You can often find authentic chuño in Latin American grocery stores or online. To use it, you must first rehydrate it by soaking the hard nuggets in warm water for several hours. They will plump up, ready to be added to hearty stews and soups, where they absorb flavors beautifully and contribute a unique, slightly chewy texture that is entirely their own. Alternatively, you can take the dried chuño and grind it into a fine, gluten-free flour. This chuño flour is a fantastic thickener for sauces and can be used to make savory pancakes or mixed into doughs, adding a deep, earthy potato flavor that is a direct link to the incredible culinary ingenuity of the Inca. But after relying on the sturdy crunch of barley bread for energy, the ancient Mesopotamians also knew how to celebrate, and for that, they turned to a sweeter, more festive creation, date wine. In the land between two rivers where date palms flourished, this golden, fermented drink was more than just a beverage. It was a symbol of abundance, a prized offering to the gods, and a central feature of any important feast or religious ceremony. While they did brew beer from barley, date wine was considered a more luxurious and potent drink, often reserved for the elite and for special occasions, showing just how highly they valued the sacred fruit of the palm. The process of making this ancient wine was an elegant, natural fermentation that any modern home enthusiast would recognize. It started with harvesting ripe dates, which were then crushed or mashed to release their sugary juice, known as must. This sticky, sweet pulp was combined with water in large clay jars called carpotu. The mixture was then left open to the air, allowing wild yeasts present on the date skins and in the environment to settle in and begin their magical work, converting the natural fruit sugars into alcohol. Depending on the temperature and the specific yeasts, this fermentation could take anywhere from a few days to several weeks. The result was a sweet, potent, and likely cloudy wine that packed a significant punch. For a truly authentic taste of Mesopotamian hospitality, you can create a simple non-alcoholic version that captures the essence of the date without the fermentation. To make a rich date syrup or rub, pit and roughly chop about 2 cups of medjool dates. Combine them in a saucepan with 4 cups of water and bring it to a gentle simmer. Let this cook for about 30 to 45 minutes until the dates have completely broken down and the liquid has reduced and thickened slightly. Strain the mixture through a fine mesh sieve, pressing on the solids to extract all of the thick caramel-colored syrup. What you're left with is a versatile, delicious sweetener that the Mesopotamians used in cooking and baking. Stir a spoonful of this syrup into yogurt, drizzle it over your Mesopotamian barley bread, or use it to sweeten a cup of tea. It's a direct, unfermented taste of the sweetness that ancient Sumerians cherished. For the more adventurous who wish to experience the fermented version, the process is a fascinating experiment in ancient food science. In a very clean 1-quart glass jar, combine 1½ cups of chopped, pitted dates with 3½ cups of unchlorinated water. Cover the jar with a piece of cheesecloth or a coffee filter secured with a rubber band to keep out insects while allowing air to flow. Store it in a cool, dark place for about 3 to 5 days, stirring once a day with a clean spoon. You'll notice bubbles beginning to form, a sure sign that fermentation has begun. After this initial period, strain out the dates and return the liquid to the jar, covering it again. Let it sit for another 5 to 7 days to continue fermenting. Taste it occasionally. It will become less sweet and more tart and complex over time. Once it reaches a flavor you enjoy, refrigerate it to halt the fermentation. You'll have created a lightly effervescent, uniquely flavored drink that connects you to the banquet halls of ancient Mesopotamia. Shifting our focus from the fermented drinks of Mesopotamia, we arrive at the sun-baked banks of the Nile for a breakfast that has powered Egyptians for millennia. This is fol medames, a humble yet magnificent dish of stewed fava beans that is so deeply woven into the fabric of Egyptian culture that its origins are literally lost in the sands of time. Archaeologists have found evidence of fava beans in 12th dynasty tombs, dating back over 3,500 years, suggesting that the pharaohs themselves may have started their day with a version of this very dish. Unlike the luxurious foods reserved for the elite, fol medames has always been the food of the people, a cheap, nutritious, and incredibly satisfying meal that sustained the workers who built the pyramids and continues to fuel modern Cairo. The magic of fol medames lies not in a complex list of ingredients, but in the transformative power of patience and slow, gentle heat. The traditional method began with dried fava beans, which were placed in a large, heavy pot called a kidra. This pot was then sealed and lowered into the dying embers of a communal bakery's oven, or even buried in a pit of warm sand to cook overnight for 12 hours or more. This long, slow simmering allowed the tough beans to become unbelievably tender, creamy, and deeply flavorful without ever coming to a boil. The beans were typically seasoned with nothing more than crushed garlic, ground cumin, and a generous glug of olive oil, allowing the earthy, nutty flavor of the favas to truly shine. To bring this ancient breakfast tradition into your own kitchen, you can easily recreate the spirit of the kidra with a modern slow cooker or a simple pot on the stove. Start with 1 cup of dried, skin-on fava beans, the brown ones often labeled as fol medames or foul medames. Soak them in plenty of water for at least 8 hours, then drain and rinse. Place them in your pot with fresh water to cover by about 2 inches. Bring it to a brief boil, then immediately reduce the heat to the lowest possible setting. Partially cover the pot and let it barely simmer for 6 to 8 hours, checking occasionally to ensure the water doesn't evaporate completely. The beans are done when they are so tender you can easily mash them with the back of a spoon. Now for the seasoning, which is where the dish truly comes to life. In a small skillet, gently warm a 1/4 cup of good olive oil. To this, add 3 minced garlic cloves and 2 teaspoons of ground cumin, swirling the pan just until the garlic becomes fragrant. Be careful not to let it burn. Pour this infused oil directly into the pot of beans, along with a generous squeeze of fresh lemon juice and salt to taste. Stir gently, mashing some of the beans slightly to thicken the mixture into a rustic, chunky stew. To serve it as it has been for centuries, ladle the warm full into a deep bowl. Make a well in the center and pour in another glisten of extra virgin olive oil. Garnish with chopped fresh parsley, diced tomatoes, and thinly sliced red onion. The traditional accompaniment is a boiled egg, either sliced on top or served on the side, adding a rich, protein-packed element. Tear off a piece of warm pita bread, scoop up a generous bite, and you are participating in a morning ritual that has remained virtually unchanged since the age of the pharaohs. A powerful and delicious testament to the enduring power of simple, good food. After the hearty and communal full medames, we journey north to the heart of the Roman Empire for a taste of something that was both incredibly personal and universally beloved, a simple cheese spread known as mortem. If garum was the bold, public flavor of Rome, mortem was its comforting, private counterpart. This was the ancient Roman equivalent of a quick sandwich spread, a humble dish prepared by and for the common person, yet its recipe was immortalized in a charming, anonymous poem from the Virgil appendix called Mortem, which gives us a beautifully detailed, almost cinematic look into the daily life of a Roman farmer preparing his meal. The poem describes a solitary man named Simulus waking before dawn to grind his ingredients by the light of an oil lamp. The name mortem itself comes from the Latin word for mortar, mortarium, which was the essential tool for its creation. This wasn't a dish for fancy banquets. It was a practical, pungent, and powerfully flavorful paste that could be slathered on bread for a sustained energy boost throughout a long day of labor. It provided a perfect balance of fats, protein, and aromatics, showcasing the Roman genius for creating maximum flavor from minimal, readily available ingredients. The traditional preparation is a rhythmic, sensory experience. Into a heavy stone mortar, the Roman cook would first add several cloves of garlic, a generous amount, as this was a key flavor, along with a hefty pinch of coarse salt. The salt acted as an abrasive, helping to break down the garlic into a smooth paste under the relentless grinding of the pestle. Next came a large bundle of fresh, leafy herbs. The most common were parsley, cilantro, rue, and celery leaf, each contributing their own sharp, green fragrance. These too were pounded and ground until they formed a vibrant green paste with the garlic. Then came the cheese, typically a salty, hard, used milk cheese similar to a modern pecorino romano. This was broken into chunks and added to the mortar, being worked into the herbal mixture until it reached a uniform, spreadable consistency. The final touch was a generous drizzle of oleum virid, high-quality green olive oil, which brought everything together into a cohesive, unctuous spread, and a splash of vinegar or a squeeze of lemon juice for a necessary hit of acidity to cut through the richness. To make your own taste of ancient Rome today, you can follow this same timeless method. In a mortar, combine 2 peeled cloves of garlic with a 1/4 teaspoon of coarse sea salt. Grind this into a smooth paste. Add a full cup of packed fresh herbs. A combination of fresh parsley, cilantro, and a few leaves of mint is wonderfully authentic. Pound these until they are fully incorporated and the mixture is fragrant and green. Crumble in 4 ounces of a firm, salty cheese like feta or pecorino, or for a milder, creamier version, use ricotta salata. Grind it all together, slowly streaming in 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil until you achieve a rustic, spreadable texture. Finish with a teaspoon of white wine vinegar or a squeeze of lemon juice, mixing well. The result is a shockingly modern tasting condiment that is absolutely bursting with flavor. The sharpness of the garlic, the freshness of the herbs, and the salty tang of the cheese create a complex symphony on the palate. Spread it thickly on a slice of crusty bread, and you are enjoying a lunch that would have been perfectly familiar to a Roman citizen 2,000 years ago. a powerful reminder that some of the simplest pleasures are truly eternal. Now, let's sail across the Mediterranean to ancient Greece, where the art of wrapping and stuffing vegetables was elevated to a culinary form that we still enjoy today. The dolma, or more specifically, dolmades, referring to those delicious little parcels made with grape leaves. The concept of using edible leaves as a natural wrapper for savory fillings is incredibly ancient, a brilliant solution for cooking and preserving food that predates even the great philosophers. While many cultures around the Mediterranean and Middle East have their own versions, the Greeks have a particularly long and proud history with this dish. In fact, the word dolma itself comes from the Turkish verb dolmak, which means to be stuffed, a testament to the centuries of culinary exchange in the region, but the practice in Greece is undoubtedly ancient. The original fillings would have been wonderfully simple, a reflection of what was readily available. Before the widespread use of rice, which was introduced later, the earliest dolmades might have been stuffed with a mixture of chopped nuts, barley, and wild herbs, all seasoned with fragrant olive oil and lemon. This was a dish born of practicality and scarcity, a way to make the most of every single ingredient, including the large, tender leaves of the wild grapevines that grew so abundantly. As trade routes expanded, rice became a staple in the Greek pantry, and it quickly became the foundation for the filling we know and love today, creating a lighter, more delicate parcel. The beauty of the classic Greek dolmade lies in its harmonious balance of textures and flavors. The filling is a fragrant combination of soft, cooked rice, plenty of fresh herbs like dill and mint scallions, and sometimes, for a richer version, minced lamb or beef. The tangy, slightly briny grape leaf provides the perfect contrast, its unique flavor infusing the rice as it steams. What's fascinating is that this dish was never just everyday fare. It was considered special, often prepared for festivals, family gatherings, and religious celebrations. It was a food of community and sharing, each little roll a perfect, self-contained bite of hospitality. You can easily recreate this taste of ancient Greek hospitality in your own kitchen using jarred grape leaves, which are a fantastic and convenient modern shortcut. Start by carefully rinsing about 30 to 40 leaves under cool water to remove the excess brine, which will make them less salty and more pliable. For the filling, sauté one finely chopped yellow onion in half a cup of olive oil until it's soft and translucent. Stir in 1 cup of rinsed, uncooked long grain rice and cook for another 2 minutes just to coat the grains in oil. Remove the pot from the heat and stir in half a cup of fresh dill, a 1/4 cup of fresh mint, the juice of 1 large lemon, and a teaspoon of salt. This is your simple, authentic filling. Lay a grape leaf flat on your work surface, shiny side down with the stem end facing you. Place a heaping teaspoon of the rice mixture near the bottom. Fold the bottom of the leaf up over the filling, then fold in the sides and roll it up tightly into a neat little cylinder like a tiny burrito. The goal is a snug package that won't unravel during cooking. Repeat this process until all your filling is used up. To cook them, line the bottom of a wide, heavy pot with a few torn or less perfect grape leaves. This will prevent the dolmades from scorching. Neatly pack your rolls in the pot, seams side down in concentric circles. Pour another half cup of olive oil and the juice of another lemon over the top, then add just enough water to barely cover them. Place a heavy heat-proof plate directly on top of the dolmades to keep them from moving while they cook. Bring the liquid to a simmer, then cover the pot and let them cook on low heat for about 50 minutes to an hour until the rice is tender and the leaves are soft. Let them cool in the pot before serving. They are traditionally enjoyed at room temperature, drizzled with a little more olive oil and perhaps an extra squeeze of lemon. Each bite is a perfect combination of the tender, herbal rice and the uniquely tangy leaf, a timeless flavor that has graced Greek tables for over 1,000 years. Moving from the savory, herb-packed flavors of the Roman mortem, we now travel across the Atlantic and centuries back in time to the vibrant heart of the Aztec Empire, where a warm, nourishing drink was the very essence of daily life and spiritual ceremony, atol. Pronounced atole, this ancient beverage was far more than just a comforting drink. It was a fundamental source of nutrition, a symbol of community, and a sacred offering to the gods. In a civilization built on the cornerstone of maize, atol was the liquid expression of that most vital grain, consumed by everyone from the smallest child to the emperor himself, often from sunrise to sunset. The foundation of atol is nixtamalized corn, a brilliant Mesoamerican innovation that transformed history. The Aztecs didn't just grind dried corn into meal. They first treated the kernels with an alkaline solution made from slaked lime or wood ash in a process called nixtamalization. This crucial step unlocked vital nutrients like niacin, making the B vitamins in the corn bioavailable and preventing deficiency diseases. It also caused the kernels to soften and their hulls to slip off, allowing them to be ground into a moist, aromatic dough called masa. It is from this very same masa that tortillas and tamales are made. For atol, the masa was then dried and ground into a fine powder known as masa harina, which is still widely available in grocery stores today and is your key to recreating this ancient drink. Preparing traditional atol is a simple, almost meditative process. To make a basic version, you would whisk masa harina with cold water to form a smooth slurry, ensuring there are no lumps. This mixture is then poured into a pot of simmering water and stirred almost constantly with a wooden spoon or a traditional whisk called a malanillo. As it heats, the magic begins. The liquid slowly thickens into a smooth, porridge-like consistency, not unlike a drinkable cream of wheat. It was during this stirring that the Aztecs would incorporate their flavorings. While a plain, lightly sweetened version was everyday fare, special occasions called for more extravagant additions. The most famous of these is without a doubt chocolatl, the bitter, frothy chocolate drink made from ground cacao beans. Combining chocolate with atol created a luxurious beverage known as champorado, a rich and deeply satisfying drink that was enjoyed by the elite and used in religious rituals. You can easily bring this ancient comfort into your modern kitchen. For a simple and authentic chocolate atol, start by combining 1 cup of masa harina with 2 cups of cold water in a bowl, whisking until it's completely smooth. In a medium saucepan, bring 4 more cups of water to a gentle simmer. Slowly pour in the masa harina slurry, whisking constantly to prevent any lumps from forming. Continue to cook over medium-low heat, stirring with a whisk or malanillo if you have one, for about 10 to 15 minutes, until the mixture has thickened noticeably and the raw corn flavor has cooked out. Then whisk in a disc of Mexican drinking chocolate, which is flavored with cinnamon and sugar, or use 2 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder along with a 1/4 cup of piloncillo sugar or brown sugar and a pinch of cinnamon. Keep stirring until the chocolate is fully melted and incorporated. The result is a warm, thick, and incredibly comforting drink that feels both ancient and instantly familiar. Serve your atol steaming hot in a mug, ideally alongside a crispy churro or a piece of buttered bread for a truly authentic experience. Enjoy it as a sustaining breakfast on a cold morning or as a soothing evening treat. With every sip of its earthy, chocolatey warmth, you are tasting the very lifeblood of the Aztec world, a testament to the enduring power of corn and the human ingenuity that transformed it into a drink fit for both mortals and gods. After the rich, chocolatey warmth of Aztec atol, we journey across the Pacific to ancient China, where another simple grain was transformed through patience and water into one of the world's most enduring comfort foods, congee. For thousands of years, this humble rice porridge has been the ultimate expression of culinary resourcefulness and healing nourishment in Chinese culture. Its origins are as ancient as rice cultivation itself, born from a simple need to stretch a precious staple. By simmering a small amount of rice in a large volume of water for a long time, A frugal cook could create a voluminous, easily digestible meal that could feed an entire family, making it a cornerstone of both peasant diets and imperial cuisine. The true genius of congee lies in its incredible versatility. It serves as a blank canvas, a warm, soothing base that can be customized to fit any season, any occasion, or any ailment. In traditional Chinese medicine, congee is considered a deeply healing food, warming to the digestive system and easy on the spleen chi. A plain congee was, and still is, the first solid food given to infants and the elderly, as well as anyone recovering from illness. But it was also celebrated in its more lavish forms. Historical texts describe elaborate congees served to emperors, studded with rare ingredients like abalone, bird's nest, or precious medicinal herbs, proving that this simple porridge could ascend to the heights of gourmet dining. The basic method for making congee is a lesson in transformational patience. The process begins with 1 part long-grain white rice, rinsed thoroughly, and up to 10 parts water or broth. This immense ratio of liquid to grain is what creates its characteristic soupy, loose consistency. The mixture is brought to a boil and then immediately reduced to the gentlest possible simmer, where it will cook for 1 to 2 hours, largely unattended. During this time, the rice grains swell, burst, and release their starch, slowly thickening the surrounding liquid into a creamy, velvety, and incredibly comforting porridge. It's a dish that practically makes itself, filling the kitchen with a warm, steamy aroma that promises comfort. To make a classic, soothing congee at home, start with 1 cup of jasmine rice and 10 cups of water, or a light chicken or vegetable broth in a large, heavy-bottomed pot. Bring it to a boil, then reduce the heat to low, partially cover the pot, and let it simmer gently for at least an hour and a half, stirring occasionally to prevent the rice from sticking to the bottom. You'll know it's ready when the grains have completely broken down and the mixture has a smooth, creamy consistency. The magic, however, happens in the topping. For a traditional and revitalizing garnish, thinly slice a 3-inch piece of fresh ginger and 3 or 4 scallions. In a small skillet, heat 2 tablespoons of neutral oil until it shimmers. Then carefully pour this hot oil over the ginger and scallions in a heatproof bowl. This technique, called exploding the aroma, wilts the aromatics and unlocks their fragrant oils. Ladle the hot congee into bowls and top generously with this ginger scallion mixture, a drizzle of soy sauce, and a sprinkle of white pepper. The result is a bowl of pure, uncomplicated wellness, the mild, starchy base providing comfort, while the sharp, aromatic toppings clear the sinuses and awaken the senses. It's a perfect balance of yin and yang in a single, steaming bowl. A timeless recipe that has soothed generations and continues to be one of the most deeply satisfying meals you can make with little more than rice, water, and time. From the soothing simplicity of Chinese congee, we find a parallel philosophy of healing and nourishment in another ancient culture, this time from the Indian subcontinent. Our next stop introduces a dish so fundamental, so deeply woven into the fabric of daily life and wellness, that it is often called the ultimate comfort food of India, khichdi. Pronounced khichdi, this humble yet powerful combination of rice and lentils is far more than just a meal. It is a culinary institution, a digestive reset, and a dish believed to balance the body and mind according to the ancient principles of Ayurveda, a healing system that dates back over 5,000 years. In Ayurveda, food is medicine, and khichdi is considered the most sattvic of all foods, meaning it is pure, balanced, and promotes clarity and harmony within the body. It is the very first solid food given to babies and the go-to meal for anyone feeling unwell, recovering from illness, or simply needing a gentle cleanse. The genius of khichdi lies in its perfect synergy of ingredients. The rice provides easily accessible carbohydrates for energy, while the lentils offer a complete protein profile, delivering all the essential amino acids. Together, they create a nutritionally complete, incredibly easy-to-digest meal that forms the foundation of countless Ayurvedic cleansing protocols. It's the ultimate edible reset button. The recipe is a masterclass in minimalist cooking, yet every single ingredient serves a specific purpose beyond mere flavor. The base is always 1 part white rice, often the easily digestible basmati variety, and 1 part split yellow mung beans known as moong dal. These lentils are specifically chosen because they are the easiest on the digestive system. Unlike heavier beans that can cause bloating, the spices are not just for taste, they are functional. Turmeric, with its vibrant golden hue, is a powerful anti-inflammatory. Cumin seeds aid in digestion and help relieve gas, while asafoetida, a pungent resin known as hing, is a classic Ayurvedic remedy for calming the digestive tract. The entire dish is brought together with ghee, which is clarified butter. In Ayurveda, ghee is revered not as a fat to be avoided, but as a sacred substance that carries the medicinal properties of the herbs and spices deep into the body's tissues. To make a classic, restorative khichdi in your own kitchen, start by rinsing half a cup of basmati rice and half a cup of split yellow mung dal together in several changes of water until the water runs clear. This step is crucial for removing any surface starch and ensuring the final dish is light and fluffy rather than gummy. In a heavy-bottomed pot, melt 2 tablespoons of ghee over medium heat. Add 1 teaspoon of cumin seeds and let them sizzle for about 30 seconds until they become fragrant and darken slightly. Then, add half a teaspoon of turmeric powder and a generous pinch of asafoetida if you have it, stirring quickly for just 10 seconds to bloom the spices in the ghee without burning them. Immediately add the rinsed rice and dal mixture to the pot, stirring to coat every grain and lentil in that spiced golden ghee. Toast them for a minute before adding 4 cups of water and a teaspoon of salt. Bring everything to a boil, then immediately reduce the heat to the lowest possible setting, cover the pot tightly, and let it simmer gently for about 20 to 25 minutes. Resist the urge to stir it during this time. You want the steam to work its magic undisturbed. When it's done, the khichdi should have a soft, porridge-like consistency, neither too dry nor too soupy. Give it a gentle stir and it's ready to serve. A bowl of khichdi is a complete meal in itself, but it is traditionally accompanied by a side of plain yogurt, which adds a cooling, probiotic element, and perhaps a spoonful of tangy mango pickle or lime pickle for a sharp contrast. Each warm, comforting spoonful is a taste of ancient wisdom, a meal designed not just to fill the stomach but to nourish the entire system, proving that sometimes the most powerful foods are also the simplest. But our culinary journey now takes a dramatic turn, moving from the humble, healing porridges of the East to a dish that represents the very pinnacle of Persian culinary artistry, polo. This isn't just rice, it's a celebration on a plate, a fragrant and elaborate creation that has been the centerpiece of Persian feasts for over 2,000 years. The skill of a cook in ancient Persia was often judged by their mastery of rice, and polo was where that skill was put to the ultimate test. While simple steamed rice, known as chilo, was for everyday meals, polo was for special occasions, a luxurious dish where the rice is meticulously prepared and then layered or mixed with a dazzling array of ingredients, from succulent meats and tart fruits to aromatic herbs and the world's most precious spice. The history of polo is deeply intertwined with the grandeur of the Persian Empire. It's believed that the cultivation of rice was introduced to the region around the 5th century before Common Era, and it quickly became a cherished staple. The royal courts of the Achaemenid and later the Sasanian empires were famed for their lavish banquets, and elaborate rice dishes would have been a fixture, showcasing the empire's wealth and access to exotic spices and ingredients from along the Silk Road. The word polo itself is the origin of the English word pilaf, but the Persian version is in a class of its own, distinguished by one particularly magical technique, the creation of todek. Toddig, which literally translates to bottom of the pot, is the crown jewel of Persian rice cooking. It is a layer of irresistibly crispy, golden brown rice that forms at the bottom of the pot during the slow steaming process. Achieving the perfect toddig crispy, evenly golden, and able to be released in one intact piece is a matter of great pride. This coveted crunch is a textural masterpiece, often flavored with a drizzle of saffron water or lined with thin slices of potato or flatbread to make it even more spectacular. The contrast between the fluffy, aromatic grains of the upper layer and the savory, crunchy toddig is an experience every food lover should have. To create an authentic polo, the rice itself undergoes a special preparation. First, long-grain basmati rice is rinsed thoroughly until the water runs clear to remove excess starch. Then, it is parboiled in well-salted water for just a few minutes until the grains have softened on the outside but are still firm in the center. This parboiling is the key to achieving those distinct, separate grains that are the hallmark of a well-made polo. The parboiled rice is then drained and rinsed with cool water to stop the cooking process. The true flavor of a classic polo comes from its luxurious additions. Saffron, the crimson stigma of the crocus flower, is absolutely essential. A few precious threads are gently toasted and then ground with a pinch of sugar before being steeped in a couple of tablespoons of hot water, releasing its mesmerizing golden color and unmistakable honey-like aroma. Fresh herbs like dill, parsley, and cilantro provide a vibrant green freshness, while barberries, known as zeresh, offer a vital pop of tartness. These tiny, ruby-red berries are a staple in Persian pantries. They are quickly rinsed and then sautéed in a bit of butter or oil with a sprinkle of sugar to balance their intense sourness, transforming them into little jewels of flavor. You can bring this regal history to your table with a simple yet stunning version known as zeresh polo. After parboiling and draining 2 cups of basmati rice, melt 3 tablespoons of butter or ghee in a heavy-bottomed pot with a tight-fitting lid. Spread half of the parboiled rice into the pot. Over this, sprinkle a generous handful of your sautéed barberries and a few tablespoons of finely chopped fresh dill. Then pile the remaining rice on top, shaping it into a gentle pyramid. Using the handle of a spoon, create a few holes in the rice mound down to the bottom of the pot. This allows steam to circulate. Drizzle the saffron water over the top of the rice, wrap the lid in a clean kitchen towel to absorb condensation, and place it firmly on the pot. Cook over very low heat for 45 minutes to an hour, allowing the magical toddig to form at the bottom. To serve, gently spoon the fluffy, saffron-streaked rice onto a platter. Then, carefully invert the pot to reveal the glorious golden brown toddig, placing it on top or breaking it into pieces to serve alongside. The result is a feast for the senses, fragrant, visually stunning, and a symphony of textures and flavors that connect you directly to the opulent banquets of ancient Persia. Leaving behind the fragrant, saffron-scented world of Persian polo, we now venture deep into the steamy jungles of Mesoamerica, where a discovery was made that would forever change the world's relationship with pleasure: the Mayan sacred bean, cacao. For the ancient Maya, chocolate was not a sweet treat to be unwrapped and eaten. It was a bitter, frothy, and intensely spiritual drink known as cacao, a beverage so revered it was considered the literal food of the gods, a currency of trade, and a central element in some of their most important rituals and celebrations. The journey of cacao began with the cacao pod, a strange, football-shaped fruit that grows directly from the trunk of the Theobroma cacao tree, a name which fittingly translates to food of the gods. The Maya believed the cacao tree was a divine gift from the maize god, and its consumption was steeped in sacred meaning. The process of transforming the raw, bitter beans inside the colorful pod into a drinkable form was a complex and labor-intensive art, one that began with fermentation. The white, mucilage-covered beans were scooped from the pods and piled into wooden bins or wrapped in leaves, where they were left to ferment for several days. This crucial step, driven by natural yeasts and bacteria, developed the complex flavor precursors within the bean, killing the germination potential and beginning to diminish the intense inherent bitterness. After fermentation, the beans were dried in the sun, often on large mats, before being carefully sorted and stored. When it was time to prepare the cacao, the next transformative step was roasting. The beans were gently toasted over a low fire in a clay comel, a flat griddle which further deepened their flavor profile, creating the rich, nutty, and aromatic notes we associate with chocolate today. The roasted beans were then cracked to remove their thin, papery shells, leaving behind the prized nibs. These nibs were the heart of the operation, and they were ground into a thick, oily paste using a stone tool called a medames and a handheld grinding stone known as a mano. This grinding process, which could take an hour or more of steady, rhythmic work, was so vital that it was often depicted in Mayan art, showing just how central this food was to their culture. The resulting chocolate paste was incredibly versatile. It could be formed into cakes or balls and left to harden for storage and trade, creating an early form of instant chocolate that could be easily transported across the vast Maya trade networks. To make the drink itself, this hardened paste was shaved or broken into pieces and combined with water, not milk, in a special round-bottomed pottery vessel. Then came the most dramatic part of the ritual, the pouring. To create the prized, frothy head that the Maya considered the most desirable part of the drink, they would pour the liquid from one vessel to another from a great height, back and forth, until a thick layer of foam rose to the top. The flavor of authentic Mayan cacao would likely surprise a modern chocolate lover. It was intensely bitter and bracing with no added sugar. Instead, its flavor came from a sophisticated blend of spices and flowers. Chilies were a common addition, providing a slow, building heat that complemented the chocolate's bitterness. Other frequent flavorings included vanilla, made from the orchids native to the region, allspice, which tastes like a combination of cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves, and the fragrant, floral petals of the isquixotl or toasted flower blossom. To experience this ancient, sacred drink for yourself, you can create an authentic version. Start with 2 ounces of 100% unsweetened cacao paste or baking chocolate, broken into small pieces. Place it in a blender with 3 cups of warm water, a half teaspoon of vanilla extract, a quarter teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a tiny pinch of ground allspice, and the most crucial, authentic ingredient, a tiny pinch of cayenne pepper. Blend on high until the mixture is completely smooth and a frothy head begins to form, which mimics the traditional pouring method. For the true experience, serve it immediately in a cup, appreciating the layer of foam on top. Take a sip and let the complex, bitter, and spicy flavors wash over you. It's a taste that connects you directly to the Maya worldview, a reminder that some of life's greatest pleasures aren't about sweetness, but about depth, ceremony, and a connection to the earth that is both powerful and profound. As we move from the spiritual intensity of Mayan chocolate, our journey takes us to a much colder, harsher landscape where survival depended on hardy, practical foods. We now set sail with the Vikings, the legendary seafarers and warriors of the north, whose diet was built to withstand long voyages and brutal winters. At the very heart of their sustenance was a simple, durable, and utterly indispensable staple, Viking flatbread. Unlike the elaborate feasts of other ancient cultures, Viking cuisine was a study in rugged efficiency, and this humble bread was its unwavering foundation, baked not in ovens but on the very stones of the hearth. The Vikings, spanning from the late 8th to the early 11th century, were masterful farmers and traders, but their Scandinavian homeland offered a limited growing season. The grains that thrived in this challenging climate were not the soft wheat common further south, but robust barley and rye. These hardy cereals could withstand poorer soil and colder temperatures, making them the absolute cornerstone of the Norse diet. Barley, in particular, was so vital that it was often used as a form of currency and wealth measurement. From these grains, they created a dense, nourishing flatbread that was easy to produce, lasted a long time without spoiling, and was perfectly portable for a life spent raiding, trading, and exploring. The recipe for Viking flatbread is a beautiful testament to their waste not, want not philosophy. It typically involved just 3 ingredients: coarse barley or rye flour, water, and sometimes a pinch of salt sourced from evaporated seawater. There was no yeast or baking powder. This was an unleavened bread meant to be mixed quickly and cooked immediately. A Viking cook would combine the flour with just enough water to form a stiff, pliable dough. This dough was then divided into small portions and rolled or patted out into thin, round discs, much like a modern tortilla or a thick cracker. The thickness could vary. A thinner bread would be crispier and store longer, while a slightly thicker one would be softer and more malleable, ideal for eating right away. The cooking process was as straightforward as the ingredients. Most Viking Age homes were centered around a long, central fire pit. The flatbreads were cooked directly on the hot stones surrounding the fire or on a flat soapstone griddle called a stekar plotter that was placed over the embers. Soapstone was prized for its ability to absorb and distribute heat evenly, creating a perfect cooking surface. The dough disc would be placed onto the scorching hot surface and left for a few minutes until the bottom was firm and toasty, then flipped to cook the other side. The bread would puff up slightly from the steam, and the result was a sturdy, slightly chewy flatbread with a smoky, nutty flavor from the barley or rye. These breads could be eaten soft and warm straight from the fire, or left to harden into a durable cracker-like form known as hardtack or ship's bread, which could survive for months in a sailor's sea chest. To truly appreciate Viking flatbread, you have to consider how it was eaten. It was rarely consumed alone. Its primary role was as an edible utensil, a plate, a bowl, and a spoon all in one. A Viking would use a piece of this tough bread to scoop up hearty stews, soak up rich broths, or create a makeshift sandwich with slices of smoked or salted meat. For a modern taste of the Viking Age, try making your own batch and serving it with traditional Nordic accompaniments. Pair your warm flatbread with slices of intensely smoky salmon or Arctic char, a dollop of creamy, tangy skyr, an ancient yogurt like cheese, and perhaps a handful of fresh dill. The combination of the smoky fish, the cool dairy, and the earthy, whole grain bread is a flavor profile that has defined Scandinavian cuisine for over 1,000 years. A simple yet powerful meal that would have fueled a warrior for a day of rowing or raiding. It's a direct, tangible connection to the daily life of the Norse people, a taste of the pragmatic ingenuity that allowed them to conquer fearsome seas and leave an indelible mark on history. After the hearty, smoky sustenance of Viking flatbread, we travel to the sun-drenched markets of ancient Egypt for a flavor experience that is all about finesse and fragrance. This brings us to our next ancient food, a culinary creation that is both incredibly simple and endlessly versatile: Egyptian dukkha. Pronounced dukar, this aromatic blend of nuts, seeds, and spices is a true testament to the Egyptian genius for transforming humble, local ingredients into something truly extraordinary. While its exact origins are lost to time, its enduring popularity across the Middle East and North Africa suggests a history that stretches back for millennia, a flavor that has been passed down through countless generations. The name dukkha itself comes from the Arabic verb to pound or to crush, which perfectly describes the traditional method of its preparation. Unlike pre-ground spice mixes, the magic of dukkha lies in the texture. Each ingredient is typically toasted separately to unlock its deepest, most potent flavor, and then they are combined and gently pounded together in a mortar and pestle just enough to break them down and mingle their oils, but not so much that they become a uniform powder. This creates a coarse, crunchy mixture that is a delight to the senses, offering a symphony of textures and a burst of flavor with every single bite. In ancient Egypt, dukkha was far more than just a seasoning. It was a social food, a ritual of sharing and community. Its most classic and beloved presentation is as a dip. A small bowl of the nut and spice mix would be placed alongside a dish of high-quality golden olive oil and a basket of fresh, flat Egyptian bread known as aish baladi. To enjoy it, you would first tear off a piece of the warm bread, dip it first into the fragrant oil to coat it, and then press it into the bowl of dukkha, gathering a generous coating of the crunchy blend. This simple act creates a perfect bite: the soft, chewy bread, the rich, fruity oil, and the explosive crunch and flavor of the dukkha all coming together in a moment of pure culinary joy. It was a quick, nutritious, and deeply satisfying snack for farmers, merchants, and families alike, a way to break bread and connect over shared, delicious simplicity. The beauty of dukkha is that there is no single, rigid recipe. It is a template that invites creativity based on what is available. However, a classic, ancient-inspired blend would have relied on ingredients abundant along the Nile. Hazelnuts or almonds provide the nutty, rich base, while sesame seeds, a crop cultivated in Egypt since pharaonic times, add a wonderful toastiness and a crucial crunch. The spice profile is where the real character shines through. Coriander seeds are essential, offering a bright, citrusy, and slightly floral note. Cumin seeds contribute their warm, earthy, and slightly smoky depth, a flavor that is absolutely foundational to Egyptian cuisine. A generous amount of black peppercorns adds a sharp, pungent kick, and a pinch of flaky sea salt brings all the elements into perfect harmony. Some variations might also include dried mint or thyme, or a pinch of chili flakes for heat. Creating your own dukkha at home is one of the easiest and most rewarding ways to bring ancient Egyptian flavors into your kitchen. Start by toasting each component separately to ensure they each reach their peak flavor without burning. In a dry skillet over medium heat, toast a half cup of raw hazelnuts, stirring frequently until they are fragrant and their skins begin to crack. Pour them onto a clean kitchen towel and rub them together to remove as much of the loose skin as possible. Then, in the same skillet, toast a quarter cup of white sesame seeds until they are lightly golden and begin to pop, then transfer them to a bowl. Next, toast 2 tablespoons of coriander seeds and 1 tablespoon of cumin seeds just until they release their incredible aroma, which only takes a minute or two. Finally, toast 1 tablespoon of black peppercorns for about 30 seconds. Combine the toasted hazelnuts, sesame seeds, coriander, cumin, and peppercorns in a mortar. Add 1 teaspoon of flaky sea salt. Now, use the pestle to pound the mixture. You're not aiming for a fine powder. You want a rustic, coarse blend where you can still see identifiable pieces of nuts and seeds. This texture is what makes the experience so engaging. Store your dukkha in an airtight jar at room temperature, where it will stay fresh and flavorful for several weeks. To enjoy it as the ancient Egyptians did, pour a few tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil into a small, shallow dish. In another dish, place a generous mound of your homemade dukkha. Tear pieces of warm pita bread or any crusty loaf. Dip them first in the oil and then into the dukkha. The combination is nothing short of magical, a direct, tangible connection to the bustling markets and sun-baked homes of ancient Egypt, proving that the most unforgettable flavors are often the simplest ones shared with others. Moving from the savory, communal crunch of Egyptian dukkha, we now step into a Roman home where the air is sweet with the scent of baking cheese and honey, a fragrance that signified devotion as much as it did delight. This brings us to one of ancient Rome's most cherished sacred foods, libum. Imagine a time when baking wasn't just for daily sustenance but was a direct conversation with the divine. Libum was precisely that, a simple, sweet cheesecake offered to the household gods, the lares and penates, who watched over the family, the home, and the pantry. Baking a libum was a ritual act, a way to seek favor, give thanks, and ensure the prosperity of the household through the irresistible offering of a warm, honey-soaked cake. The recipe itself, beautifully preserved for us by the agricultural writer Cotto the Elder in his work De Agricultura, is a stunning example of Roman culinary simplicity yielding profound results. It calls for just 4 ingredients: cheese, flour, an egg, and honey. The cheese used was not our modern creamy ricotta, but a similar fresh, soft sheep's or goat's milk cheese called Cassius recens. This cheese would have been drier and tangier than contemporary ricotta, so a modern blend can better capture the authentic texture and flavor. The flour was likely far, a primitive wheat or emmer, which gives a heartier, nuttier taste than all-purpose flour. The genius of the recipe lies in its proportions and method: 2 pounds of cheese to 1 pound of flour, with just a single egg to bind it. This creates a dense, rich dough that is formed into a loaf or individual cakes and baked until firm. But the most enchanting detail, the step that truly connects you to the past, involves the bay leaf. Before baking, the Romans would line the bottom of their cooking pot or baking dish with fresh bay leaves, also known as laurel leaves, and place the shaped libum on top of them. This wasn't just for presentation, it was a crucial flavoring technique. As the libum baked, the heat would gently warm the bay leaves, releasing their complex, herbal, and slightly minty aroma directly into the cake's base. This infusion of flavor elevated the simple cheese and flour mixture into something fragrant, sophisticated, and truly worthy of a god. After baking, the warm cake was pierced all over and drenched in warm honey, which would seep into every pore, creating a sticky, sweet, and savory masterpiece. To bring this ancient Roman devotional practice into your own kitchen, you can create a libum that would make a Roman matron proud. In a large bowl, combine 1 15-ounce container of whole milk ricotta cheese, 1 well-beaten egg, and 1 cup of all-purpose flour. For a more authentic texture and flavor, you can use half ricotta and half a drained, crumbled farmer's cheese or a soft goat cheese. Mix these ingredients together until they form a soft, slightly sticky dough. Turn the dough out onto a floured surface and gently knead it just a few times until it comes together. Then form it into 1 large round loaf or 4 smaller individual cakes. Now for the magical touch, take a handful of fresh bay leaves, do not use dried as they won't release the same essential oils, and arrange them in a single layer on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. Place your shaped libum directly on top of this fragrant bed. Bake in a preheated oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for about 35 to 40 minutes for 1 large loaf, or 20 to 25 minutes for smaller cakes, until it is firm to the touch and has developed a beautiful golden brown color. While the libum is baking, gently warm half a cup of good quality honey in a small saucepan. As soon as you remove the libum from the oven, use a skewer or a thin knife to poke holes all over the top. Slowly pour the warm honey over the hot cake, allowing it to soak in and create a glistening, sticky glaze. Let it cool for at least 15 minutes before serving. The result is a dessert that is unlike any modern cheesecake, dense, slightly savory from the cheese, and perfumed with the subtle, herbal essence of the bay leaves that mingles perfectly with the floral sweetness of the honey. Each bite is a taste of ancient piety, a simple yet profound offering that turns your kitchen into a temple. Leaving behind the complex flavors of libum and dukkha, we travel to the heart of ancient Greek daily life, where the most fundamental food was also the most humble, a simple barley mash called maza. In a culture renowned for its philosophers, its epic poetry, and its athletic ideals, the daily sustenance for the vast majority of people was this unassuming, nourishing porridge. While the wealthy might have enjoyed finely milled wheat bread, fish, and meat, maza was the true staff of life for common citizens, soldiers, and even the great thinkers like Socrates, who reportedly praised its simplicity and the clear-headedness it provided. This was not a food of poverty, but one of practicality and virtue, embodying the Greek ideal of moderation and strength. The preparation of maza couldn't be more straightforward, which was precisely its appeal. It began with barley flour, a grain that grew well in Greece's rocky soil and was far more affordable and reliable than wheat. This flour was not the refined, sifted product we know today. It was a coarse, whole grain meal, often lightly toasted in a dry pan before use to develop a warm, nutty flavor and to help it absorb liquid more easily. To transform this toasted barley meal into maza, a cook would simply combine it with a liquid, most commonly water, but sometimes goat's or sheep's milk for a richer, more nutritious version. There was no cooking involved in the most basic preparation. It was merely stirred together into a thick, dough-like paste that could be shaped with the hands into a simple cake or ball and eaten immediately. This method made it the ultimate portable, instant meal for a farmer heading to the fields or a hoplite soldier on the march, requiring no fire or elaborate utensils. For a more comforting, porridge-like dish, the barley meal could be gently heated with the liquid, stirred constantly until it thickened into a warm, creamy mass. This hot version was particularly welcome during colder months. The flavor of plain maza was earthy, grainy, and admittedly quite plain, which is where the ancient Greek pantry offered its enhancements. A drizzle of thick, golden honey was the most cherished and common addition, turning the simple mash into a sweet and satisfying treat. Olive oil, the liquid gold of the Mediterranean, was another frequent topping, adding a rich, fruity dimension and valuable calories. Sometimes a sprinkle of salt or a few drops of vinegar provided a savory counterpoint. To bring this ancient Greek staple into your modern kitchen with a twist that honors its spirit, the process is wonderfully simple. Start by gently toasting half a cup of barley flour in a dry skillet over medium heat, stirring constantly for about 3 to 4 minutes until it becomes fragrant and takes on a light tan color. This step is crucial for unlocking its deepest flavor. For a cold, traditional maza, simply transfer the toasted flour to a bowl and gradually whisk in about 1/3 of a cup of cold water or milk until a thick, moldable paste forms. You can then shape it into small patties or roll it into balls. For a more modern and breakfast-friendly approach, create a warm porridge. In a small saucepan, whisk the toasted barley flour with 1 cup of milk or water, making sure there are no lumps. Place it over low heat and cook, stirring constantly for about 5 to 7 minutes until the mixture thickens significantly. Sweeten this warm porridge with a generous tablespoon of honey and a pinch of salt. Then truly make it your own by stirring in a handful of chopped walnuts or almonds for crunch, and a few dried figs or apricots chopped finely for a chewy, sweet contrast. The result is a hearty, wholesome, and genuinely delicious meal that connects you directly to the dawn of Western civilization, a taste of the simple fuel that powered some of history's greatest minds. From the simple, hand-held sustenance of Greek maza, we venture now into the realm of a truly communal and celebratory dish, one that would have filled the air of a Sumerian home with the most incredible aromas imaginable. This is the Mesopotamian lamb stew, a hearty, slow-simmered masterpiece that represents some of the earliest known principles of complex cooking. In a land where the wealth of a household was often measured in livestock, a lamb stew was not an everyday meal. It was a dish for special occasions, for welcoming honored guests, or for celebrating a successful harvest. It was a symbol of hospitality and prosperity, a way to showcase one's ability to transform basic ingredients into something rich, complex, and deeply satisfying. The foundation of this ancient stew was, of course, lamb, the meat of choice for the Mesopotamians, who were among the first cultures to domesticate sheep. But the true genius of this recipe lies in its cooking liquid and its aromatics. While we might instinctively reach for broth or wine today, the Mesopotamians used 2 ingredients they had in glorious abundance: beer and vinegar. Beer provided a malty, slightly sweet base that would tenderize the meat and add an incredible depth of flavor as it reduced. Vinegar, often made from dates or grapes, offered a necessary sharpness to cut through the richness of the lamb, creating a perfectly balanced sauce. The third foundational element was the allium, most likely the onion, which was a staple in their gardens. Slowly cooked, the onions would melt into the sauce, lending a natural sweetness and body that acted as a thickener long before the invention of the roux. The cooking process was a lesson in patience, entirely dictated by the technology of the time. This stew would not have been prepared over a quick, hot flame. Instead, it was a dish designed for the gentle, residual heat of a hearth or a communal bakery's dying oven. After a quick sear on the meat in a heavy clay pot, all the ingredients would be combined. The lid would be sealed on with a ring of wet clay, and the pot would be placed in the embers to cook for hours, even overnight. This long, slow braising broke down the tough cuts of lamb into utter tenderness, allowing the flavors of the beer, vinegar, and onions to penetrate every fiber of the meat. It was a passive, energy-efficient cooking method that yielded the most extraordinary results. You can recreate this ancient feast in your modern kitchen with a few simple updates that honor the spirit of the original while acknowledging the ingredients in your own pantry. Start with 2 pounds of lamb shoulder cut into 1-inch cubes. In a heavy Dutch oven, heat a tablespoon of olive oil and brown the lamb in batches, ensuring you get a good sear on all sides for maximum flavor. Remove the lamb and set it aside. In the same pot, add 2 large onions chopped and 2 cloves of minced garlic, cooking until they are soft and translucent. This is where we add a modern twist: 2 chopped carrots and 2 chopped potatoes. While these New World vegetables weren't available to the Sumerians, they absorb the fantastic cooking liquid beautifully and make the stew a complete meal. Return the lamb to the pot and pour in 1 bottle of a good malty brown ale or stout, the modern equivalent of their ancient unfiltered beer. Add a 1/4 cup of date syrup or pomegranate molasses to stand in for their fruit-based vinegar, providing that essential sweet and sour tang. If you have it, a tablespoon of tamarind paste will also work wonderfully. Season generously with salt, a teaspoon of ground cumin, and a 1/2 teaspoon each of coriander and cinnamon, spices that would have been available through trade routes. Bring the stew to a simmer on the stovetop, then cover it and transfer it to a preheated oven set to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Let it cook there undisturbed for at least 2.5 to 3 hours until the lamb is fork tender and the sauce has thickened into a glossy, dark gravy. The smell that will fill your kitchen is nothing short of historic, a rich, malty, and deeply savory aroma that would have been just as familiar to a Mesopotamian family 4,000 years ago as it is to you today. Serve this magnificent stew in deep bowls, perhaps with a side of the barley flatbread we made earlier to scoop up every last bit of the incredible sauce. It's a powerful, tangible connection to the past, a dish that proves the desire to gather around a pot of something slow-cooked and deeply flavorful is a truly ancient human tradition. Now let's journey high into the Andes Mountains once more, but this time for a snack. If chuño was the ingenious preserved staple of the Inca, then cancha was its irresistible everyday counterpart. This is the ancient Inca version of popcorn, but without the pop, a simple, satisfying, and incredibly crunchy toasted corn that has been a staple in the Andes for centuries and remains just as popular on street corners in Peru and Bolivia today as it was in the time of the Sapa Inca. This humble snack is a perfect example of how the Inca and their descendants mastered their most sacred crop, transforming the humble corn kernel into something truly magical with nothing more than heat and a little salt. The type of corn used is absolutely crucial to authentic cancha. The Inca didn't use the sweet, tender yellow corn we commonly find in supermarkets. They developed and cultivated a very special type with extraordinarily large, starchy kernels, known today as maize chulp or maize mote. These kernels are much tougher and denser than modern sweet corn. They have a hard, glassy endosperm that allows them to puff up and become crisp when heated, rather than soft and mushy. This specific corn is still grown in the Andes and is becoming increasingly available in international markets or online, often labeled as cancha corn or toasting corn. If you can find it, it makes all the difference, creating the signature giant, puffed, and nutty kernels that are impossible to stop eating. The traditional method of preparation is a study in minimalist perfection. A clay pot or a flat concave stone called a komel would be heated over a fire. A handful of the large, dried corn kernels would be sprinkled onto the hot surface, often with a few drops of oil if it was available, but frequently cooked completely dry. The cook would then constantly shake and stir the kernels with a wooden tool, ensuring they heated evenly and didn't burn. As the kernels toasted, something wonderful would happen. The intense, dry heat would cause the moisture trapped inside the kernel to turn to steam, building pressure. However, unlike popcorn, the hull of this particular corn is too strong to burst open dramatically. Instead, the kernel puffs up, expanding to nearly twice its original size, while the inside transforms from a hard, starchy pellet into a light, airy, and incredibly crunchy morsel. The final touch was a generous sprinkle of coarse salt, which would stick to the naturally slightly oily surface of the puffed corn. You can easily recreate this addictive ancient snack in your own kitchen with a heavy skillet or a sheet pan. If you've managed to source authentic maize chulp, start with 1 cup of kernels. Heat a large, heavy-bottomed skillet, preferably cast iron, over medium-high heat. Add just a single tablespoon of a neutral oil with a high smoke point, like avocado or sunflower oil, and swirl to coat the pan. Add the corn kernels and spread them into a single layer. They will need to toast for a good 10 to 15 minutes, so be patient. Shake the pan or stir the kernels frequently with a wooden spoon. You'll first hear them clicking and dancing in the pan, and then you'll notice them gradually beginning to puff up and turn a beautiful golden brown. Once most of the kernels have expanded and are crisp, transfer them to a bowl and immediately toss with fine sea salt to taste. For an even easier, hands-off method, you can use your oven. Preheat it to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Toss 1 cup of the dried corn kernels with 1 tablespoon of oil and spread them in a single layer on a baking sheet. Roast for about 20 to 25 minutes, shaking the pan every 5 minutes or so to promote even toasting and puffing. Again, toss with salt immediately after they come out of the oven. The result is a bowl full of warm, golden, irregularly puffed kernels that have an amazing nutty, corny flavor and a satisfying crunch that rivals any modern chip or snack mix. It's a snack that is both timeless and utterly irresistible, a direct and delicious link to the high-altitude home of the Inca. But let's leave behind the open fire and the rustic crunch of Andean corn and step into the delicate, steam-filled kitchens of ancient China, where a culinary revolution was taking place behind bamboo lids. Our next ancient food is a masterpiece of texture and technique that has captivated the world for centuries, the Chinese baozi. These aren't just steamed buns, they are edible clouds, soft and pillowy vessels that cradle savory treasures within. A testament to Chinese ingenuity in harnessing the simple, transformative power of steam. The story of the bao begins during the tumultuous yet culturally explosive period of the Three Kingdoms, around the 3rd century of the Common Era. Legend credits its invention to the brilliant military strategist Zhuge Liang. The tale goes that during a southern campaign, his army was stalled by a treacherous river, and local shamans advised that to appease the angry river gods and ensure safe passage, he must sever the heads of 50 of his own men and throw them into the water as a sacrifice. Horrified by this barbaric idea, the clever general instead devised a humane alternative. He ordered his cooks to shape dough into human head-sized buns, stuffing them with minced meat and then steam them. These doughy heads were offered to the river, the gods were apparently appeased, and his army crossed safely. Whether fact or folklore, this story cemented the bao's place in Chinese culture, and it rapidly evolved from a ritual offering into an everyday delight, a portable meal for laborers, a dim sum favorite for the elite, and a fixture on family tables. The true magic of the bao lies in its duality, the impossibly soft, white exterior and the flavorful, often surprising interior. The dough itself is a living thing, a testament to the ancient Chinese mastery of fermentation. The key is a natural leavening agent called liaomian, or old dough, a piece of fermented dough saved from a previous batch, a primitive form of sourdough starter that acts as the engine for the rise. This technique predates the use of modern commercial yeasts by over a millennium. The process involves creating a light, wet dough from just wheat flour, water, and a piece of this old starter. This dough is then left to ferment for several hours in a warm place. During this rest, the wild yeasts and bacteria in the starter become active, feasting on the starches and releasing carbon dioxide gas. It is these tiny, trapped bubbles that will later expand dramatically in the intense heat of the steamer, causing the buns to puff up into their signature fluffy, airy texture. The final dough is gently kneaded, not to knock all the air out, but to redistribute those precious bubbles, ensuring an even, tender crumb. While the dough provides the ethereal structure, the filling is the soul of the bao. In ancient times, this was a brilliant way to stretch precious proteins and vegetables, making a little meat feed a large family. The most classic filling, and one that echoes the legendary origins, is a savory pork mixture. Finely minced or ground pork is combined with a symphony of aromatics, finely chopped scallions, fresh ginger, and garlic. This base is then seasoned with soy sauce for saltiness and umami depth, a splash of shaoxing wine for complexity, and a few drops of sesame oil for its unmistakable nutty fragrance. A small amount of broth or water is often stirred in, which, upon steaming, turns into a burst of hot, savory juice, a highly prized quality known as soup-filled or tang bao. For a vegetarian option, a finely diced medley of cabbage, shiitake mushrooms, carrots, and firm tofu, all bound together with the same flavorful seasonings, creates a filling that is every bit as satisfying and complex. To bring this ancient art into your own kitchen, you can begin by making the dough. Combine 2 cups of all-purpose flour with 1 teaspoon of instant yeast, a modern convenience that stands in for the old dough starter, 1 tablespoon of sugar to feed the yeast, and half a teaspoon of salt. Gradually mix in 3/4 of a cup of warm water and 1 tablespoon of neutral oil until a shaggy dough forms. Turn it out onto a floured surface and knead for a full 10 minutes until it becomes incredibly smooth and elastic. Place this ball of dough in a greased bowl, cover it, and let it rise in a warm spot for about 1 to 2 hours or until it has doubled in size. While the dough proofs, prepare your filling. In a bowl, mix half a pound of ground pork with 2 finely chopped scallions, 1 tablespoon of minced ginger, 2 teaspoons of soy sauce, 1 teaspoon of shaoxing wine or dry sherry, half a teaspoon of sesame oil, and 2 tablespoons of water or chicken stock. Stir vigorously in one direction until the mixture becomes cohesive and slightly sticky. Once the dough has risen, punch it down gently to release the air. Roll it into a long log and cut it into 12 equal pieces. Take each piece and roll it into a circle about 4 inches in diameter, making the edges thinner than the center. Place a heaping tablespoon of filling in the center of each circle. Now comes the most skilled part, the pleating. Use one hand to hold the bun and the other to pinch and fold the edges of the dough up and over the filling, creating a series of small pleats all around the circumference, and finally twisting them together at the top to seal the bun completely. Line a steamer basket with parchment paper or cabbage leaves to prevent sticking. Place the buns inside, ensuring they have enough space to expand. Importantly, do not turn on the steamer yet. Let the shaped buns rest for 20 to 30 minutes for a final proof. They will puff up slightly. Now, steam them over vigorously boiling water for 15 to 18 minutes. Crucially, once they are done, do not immediately lift the lid. Turn off the heat and let them sit for 5 minutes in the receding steam. This prevents the sudden change in temperature from causing the beautiful, fluffy buns to collapse. When you finally lift the lid, you'll be greeted by a basket of soft, snow-white buns. Tear one open to release a cloud of fragrant steam and reveal the juicy, savory filling within, a perfect, self-contained meal that is a direct, delicious link to the ingenious cooks of ancient China. While the delicate art of the Chinese bao represents one kind of culinary mastery, our next ancient food celebrates a completely different, yet equally brilliant, approach to transforming simple ingredients into something extraordinary. We now travel to the Indian subcontinent, where the monsoon rains are a life-giving force, and the craving for something warm, crispy, and deeply spiced led to the creation of one of the world's most perfect snacks, the pakora. This isn't just a fried vegetable, it's a symphony of textures and flavors, a food born from the rhythm of the seasons and the ingenious use of a single, magical flour that has been a cornerstone of Indian cuisine for millennia. The story of the pakora is deeply intertwined with the arrival of the annual monsoon. After the intense, dry heat of summer, the first rains bring a sense of celebration and renewal, but they also bring a distinct chill to the air. This is the moment when the pakora truly shines. It's the food of coziness, of gathering on the porch to watch the rain, of sharing hot, fresh bites with family alongside a steaming cup of spiced chai. While its exact origins are lost to time, the technique of dipping vegetables in a spiced batter and frying them is ancient, a culinary principle that spread across the subcontinent, with each region adding its own unique twist. The name itself, pakora, likely derives from the Sanskrit word pakvavata, meaning a fried delicacy made of pulses, pointing to a history that stretches back for centuries, if not longer. The absolute heart and soul of a pakora is its batter, and its key ingredient is besan or chickpea flour. This brilliant, golden flour made from ground dried chickpeas is one of the great gifts of ancient Indian food science. Unlike wheat flour, besan is naturally gluten-free, and it possesses a unique property. When mixed with water, it doesn't form stretchy gluten strands, but instead creates a thick, velvety paste that adheres beautifully to food. But the real magic happens in the hot oil. The proteins and starches in besan create an incredibly crisp, craggy, and substantial crust that is far more robust and flavorful than any tempura-style batter. It's a perfect, sturdy vessel for the spices that define this snack, and the spices are where the true character emerges. A basic pakora batter is a blank canvas for a masterful blend of aromatics. The foundation is often a generous pinch of turmeric, lending its warm, golden hue and earthy flavor. To this, ground coriander and cumin seeds are added for their citrusy and smoky depth. But the real signature is the heat, which comes not from one source but from a layered attack. Fresh green chilies, finely minced, provide a bright, immediate kick, while a pinch of red chili powder or cayenne pepper offers a slower, building warmth that lingers on the palate. Finally, the secret weapon that elevates the entire experience is ajwain or garum seeds. These tiny, thyme-scented seeds have a sharp, pungent flavor that cuts through the richness of the frying oil and aids digestion, a small but crucial detail that showcases the holistic thinking of ancient Indian cooking. The beauty of pakoras lies in their incredible versatility. Almost any vegetable can be transformed by this spiced besan cloak. Slices of starchy potato become golden, crispy discs. Leafy spinach, when dipped in batter and fried, turns into a whimsical, lacy green cloud. Onions are sliced thin, mixed directly into the batter, and dropped in clumps to create crunchy, savory fritters. Cauliflower florets, rings of onion, even thin slices of eggplant or paneer cheese all are fair game. The process is wonderfully simple and deeply communal. The batter is mixed to a thick, pancake-like consistency. The vegetables are dipped, and then they are gently lowered into moderately hot oil. They sizzle immediately, bobbing and turning a beautiful golden brown within minutes. The sound, the smell, the anticipation, it's all part of the ritual. To bring this ancient monsoon tradition into your kitchen, start by making the batter. In a large bowl, combine 1 cup of Bisan chickpea flour, 2 tablespoons of rice flour, which adds extra crispiness, half a teaspoon of turmeric, 1 teaspoon of ground coriander, 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, a 1/4 teaspoon of red chili powder, half a teaspoon of ajwain seeds, and a teaspoon of salt. Gradually whisk in about 3/4 of a cup of cold water until you have a thick, smooth batter that will thickly coat the back of a spoon. Fold in 1 finely chopped small onion, 1 finely chopped green chili, and 2 tablespoons of chopped fresh cilantro. For the vegetables, you can use about 2 cups of your chosen produce. Potato slices should be parboiled first so they cook through in the fryer. Spinach leaves just need a good wash and dry. Cauliflower should be broken into very small florets. Heat about 2 inches of a neutral oil like sunflower or peanut oil in a heavy pot to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Working in batches, dip your vegetables into the batter, letting the excess drip off, and carefully lower them into the hot oil. Fry for 3 to 4 minutes, turning once until they are a deep golden brown and incredibly crisp. Drain them on a wire rack set over a baking sheet. This keeps them crispy far better than paper towels. Serve your pakoras immediately while they are blisteringly hot and audibly crunchy. They are traditionally accompanied by 2 very different chutneys, a sweet and tangy tamarind date chutney for a fruity contrast, and a vibrant green mint cilantro chutney for a fresh herbal kick. Each bite is a spectacular contrast, the shatteringly crisp, savory exterior giving way to the soft, warm, steamed vegetable within. It's a taste of celebration, of rainy afternoons, and of an ancient culinary wisdom that understood how to turn the humblest garden harvest into a truly transcendent experience. After the crisp, fiery delight of Indian pakoras, we slow the pace and journey to the heart of ancient Persia for a dish that is the very definition of comfort and community, ash-e-rishteh. This is not merely a soup, it is a vast culinary tapestry, a thick, hearty stew brimming with noodles, legumes, and a forest of fresh herbs, all brought together by the unique, tangy punch of cash. For thousands of years, through Noah's celebrations and long winter nights, this soup has been a symbol of prosperity, health, and the deep-seated Persian tradition of sharing a meal from a single, large pot, nourishing both body and soul. The name itself tells a story. Ash refers to a thick, hearty soup or pottage, a category of dish held in the highest esteem in Persian cuisine, while rishteh means noodle. The inclusion of noodles is particularly symbolic, especially when served during the Persian New Year, Nowruz. The long, unbroken strands are believed to represent the threads of life and fate, symbolizing a wish for a smooth and long path through the coming year. But beyond its symbolism, ash-e-rishteh is a masterpiece of nutritional wisdom. It is a complete plant-based meal in a bowl, perfectly combining proteins from its variety of beans and lentils, complex carbohydrates from the noodles and starchy legumes, and a powerhouse of vitamins and minerals from the staggering amount of fresh herbs. It's a dish designed to sustain, to heal, and to provide deep, lasting energy. Creating an authentic ash-e-rishteh is a labor of love, a process of building layers of flavor that is as meditative as it is rewarding. It begins with a base of caramelized onions, slowly fried in oil until they are a deep golden brown, providing a foundational sweetness. Then comes the vast array of legumes, a true pantry raid. A typical recipe calls for a combination of chickpeas, kidney beans, and lentils, each adding its own unique texture and earthiness. These are simmered for hours in a rich vegetable broth until they are perfectly tender. The next layer is the rishteh itself. Thick, flat Persian noodles are added to the pot, where they cook directly in the flavorful broth, releasing their starch and helping to thicken the soup into its characteristic, stew-like consistency. But the most dramatic and defining moment comes with the addition of the greens. We are not talking about a mere sprinkle. A proper ash-e-rishteh involves several entire bunches of fresh herbs finely chopped. Spinach provides body and earthiness, while parsley and cilantro offer their bright, clean notes. The real star, however, is fenugreek leaves, known as shanbalile. This herb, with its distinctively bitter, celery-like flavor, is absolutely essential, providing the soup with its unique, unforgettable aroma that is the hallmark of an authentic ash. These greens are stirred into the pot in what seems like an impossible volume, wilting down into a vibrant green tapestry. Finally, we come to the crowning glory, kashk. This is a traditional Persian dairy product, a fermented whey that is dehydrated into hard, chalky balls or a thick, spreadable paste. It has an intense, salty and tangy flavor, similar to a very rich, aged cheese or sour cream, but with a much deeper and more complex umami punch. To use it, the hard kashk is reconstituted with warm water into a smooth, creamy liquid, which is then swirled into the soup just before serving. For the home cook outside of Iran, finding authentic kashk can be a challenge, but there is a fantastic and delicious workaround. A mixture of thick, plain Greek yogurt and a touch of sour cream can be thinned with a little water to create a very credible substitute that provides that essential creamy tang. To serve this magnificent soup, ladle it into deep bowls. Then the final garnishes are applied with ceremony. A generous dollop of the kashk or yogurt mixture is swirled on top. This is followed by a spoonful of those reserved, deeply caramelized onions, now sizzling and fragrant. A drizzle of vibrant mint oil, made by frying dried mint in a little hot oil, is the final touch, adding a spectacular aroma and a beautiful dark green contrast. The first spoonful is a revelation: the rich, earthy broth, the soft beans and noodles, the freshness of all those herbs, all cut through by the tangy kashk and topped with the sweet onions and fragrant mint. It is a symphony in a bowl, a taste of ancient Persian hospitality that feels both profoundly nourishing and utterly luxurious. Now, let's journey deep into the steamy jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula, where the ancient Maya mastered the art of cooking with fire and citrus in a dish that remains a cornerstone of the region's cuisine, pakora. This is not a heavy, slow-cooked stew, but a celebration of bright, sharp, and smoky flavors, a preparation that showcases the Maya's ingenious use of preservation and their deep understanding of how acidity can transform tough cuts of meat into something extraordinarily tender and delicious. The name itself, pakora, literally translates to grilled over the embers, painting a vivid picture of its rustic, open-fire origins, a cooking method as old as civilization itself in the region. The story of pakora begins not in a palace kitchen, but as a brilliant solution for preserving meat in a hot, humid climate long before refrigeration. Mayan hunters or farmers would salt pieces of pork heavily to draw out moisture and inhibit bacterial growth. When it was time to eat, this salted meat needed to be rehydrated and its intense saltiness balanced out. The solution was a marinade made from the most abundant citrus fruit available, the bitter or sour orange, known in Spanish as Naranja agria. This fruit is not like the sweet navel oranges we commonly eat. It has a thick, bumpy rind and an intensely tart, slightly bitter juice that is packed with flavor and acidity. Soaking the salted pork in this potent juice for hours would not only help to rehydrate the meat and leach out some of the excess salt, but the acid would also begin to break down the tough muscle fibers, performing a primitive form of tenderization that resulted in a final texture that was remarkably soft and succulent. But the true soul of pakora, the element that gives it its unmistakable identity and vibrant reddish-golden hue, is a achiote paste. Achiote comes from the seeds of the anato tree, and the Maya have been using it for thousands of years, not just as a spice but also as a body paint and a dye. The seeds themselves have a very subtle, earthy, and slightly peppery flavor, but their primary role is for color, imparting a stunning, deep orange-red pigment that makes any dish visually spectacular. To make the paste, the hard achiote seeds are ground together with other classic Mayan aromatics: garlic, oregano, allspice, and cumin. and then moistened with more sour orange juice and a little vinegar to form a thick, vibrantly colored marinade. This paste is rubbed liberally all over the pork, where it acts as a flavor adhesive and a coloring agent, ensuring every inch of the meat is infused with its unique character. The final cooking is a study in simplicity and flavor layering. The marinated pork, typically shoulder or loin cut into thin, wide steaks, is grilled over a wood fire. The preferred wood is often chuño or other local hardwoods, whose smoke adds another layer of earthy, aromatic complexity. The pork is cooked quickly over high heat, creating a beautiful caramelized, slightly charred crust on the outside from the sugars in the citrus marinade, while the inside remains juicy and tender. The result is a piece of meat that is at once smoky, savory, tangy, and subtly earthy, a perfect balance of flavors that is uniquely Mayan. To experience pak chuk authentically, it must be served with its traditional accompaniments, which are designed to complement and cut through the richness of the pork. The first is a fiery, pickled onion relish called cebolla en escabeche. Thinly sliced red onions are submerged in a boiling mixture of sour orange juice, vinegar, and a pinch of salt, sometimes with a habanero pepper added for heat. The hot liquid slightly cooks the onions, turning them a brilliant pink and softening their sharp bite into a tangy, crisp condiment that provides a necessary acidic crunch against the smoky meat. The second essential element is warm, soft corn tortillas, handmade from nixtamalized corn masa. These act as the edible utensil, the vessel for building perfect little tacos. You can bring this vibrant taste of the ancient Maya to your own grill. For the marinade, combine the juice of 4 sour oranges if you cannot find them, a mix of 2 parts fresh orange juice to 1 part lime juice and 1 part grapefruit juice is a good substitute, with 3 tablespoons of prepared achiote paste, 3 minced garlic cloves, 1 teaspoon of dried oregano, half a teaspoon of ground cumin, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Pour this over 1 pound of pork shoulder, sliced into half-inch thick steaks, and let it marinate in the refrigerator for at least 4 hours, or ideally overnight. Grill the pork over medium-high heat for about 4 to 5 minutes per side until nicely charred and cooked through. Let it rest for a few minutes before slicing it against the grain into thin strips. Serve immediately with warm corn tortillas, the pink pickled onions, and perhaps a spoonful of fiery habanero salsa or some simply stewed black beans. Each bite is a perfect harmony of smoky, sour, savory, and spicy, a direct and delicious link to the ingenious cooks of the ancient Maya world. After the vibrant, citrus-soaked fire of Mayan pak chuk, we sail into a much colder, harsher world where survival depended on a single, steadfast pot simmering over the hearth fire. This brings us to a dish that was the absolute bedrock of Viking life from Scandinavia to the shores of North America: skårs, pronounced roughly like scouse a. This was not a specific recipe with rigid instructions, but a concept, a daily practice of resourcefulness and communal eating. In the challenging climate of the Norse homelands, where winters were long and growing seasons short, no part of an animal or vegetable could be wasted. Skårs was the brilliant, ever-evolving solution, a hearty, slow-simmered stew that transformed tough cuts of meat, foraged greens, and hardy root vegetables into a single, nourishing, and deeply satisfying meal for an entire family or a crew of hungry raiders. The heart of any Viking home was the longfire, a central hearth that provided warmth, light, and the only means of cooking. Suspended over this fire by a chain would be a large, heavy iron or soapstone cauldron, and it was in this vessel that the day's skårs would simmer for hours, even all day long. The process was one of constant addition. The base would often be water, but for a richer flavor, ale or beer, a staple Viking drink, was frequently used, its malty sweetness providing a wonderful depth that balanced the savoriness of the meat. The first ingredients into the pot would be the toughest, cuts of meat like mutton from older sheep, beef shank, or venison from a recent hunt. These would be given a long, slow braise to break down their tough connective tissues into fork tender perfection. As the day progressed, the cook would add whatever was available from the storage chest or the garden. This is where the true spirit of scores emerges. Onions and garlic, if they had been traded for or grown, would go in early to flavor the broth. Then came the root vegetables that could be stored through the winter: turnips, carrots, parsnips, and the Viking staple, cabbage, all chopped into large chunks to withstand the long cooking. As the stew neared completion, handfuls of chopped wild leeks, nettles, or other hardy greens might be stirred in for a fresh green note and extra vitamins. The seasoning was simple but effective: a generous amount of coarse sea salt, and most importantly, a big bundle of fresh herbs tied together with string known as a bouquet garni. This would typically include dill, which grows abundantly in the north, thyme, and plenty of wild caraway seeds for a warm, anise-like flavor that is deeply characteristic of ancient Norse cuisine. You can easily channel your inner Viking chef and create a magnificent scores that honors this tradition of improvisation. Start with 2 pounds of a tough cut of beef, like chuck roast or stew meat, cut into large chunks. Pat them dry and season liberally with salt and pepper. In a large, heavy Dutch oven, heat a tablespoon of bacon fat or oil over medium-high heat and brown the beef well on all sides. This step is crucial for building a rich, flavorful foundation. Remove the beef and set it aside. In the same pot, add 1 large diced onion and 2 cloves of minced garlic, cooking until softened. Now, deglaze the pot with a full bottle of a good, malty brown ale or stout, using a wooden spoon to scrape up all those flavorful brown bits from the bottom. This is the modern equivalent of their ale-based broth. Return the beef to the pot and add enough beef stock or water to just cover the meat. Bring this to a simmer, then reduce the heat to the lowest possible setting, cover the pot, and let it cook gently for at least 2 hours. This long, slow braise is what will transform the tough beef into sublime tenderness. After 2 hours, add your Viking vegetables: 3 chopped carrots, 2 chopped parsnips, 1 large turnip peeled and chopped, and 1/4 of a green cabbage roughly chopped into wedges. Tuck these down into the liquid. To this, add your herb bundle: a few sprigs of fresh dill and thyme tied together with kitchen twine, along with a teaspoon of caraway seeds. Let the stew continue to cook for another 45 minutes to an hour until the vegetables are tender but not mushy. The final result is a deeply aromatic, rich and hearty stew. The ale provides a malty backbone that is not overly beery but adds a wonderful complexity, while the caraway and dill give it a uniquely Nordic character that is both familiar and intriguingly ancient. Serve it in a large bowl with a hunk of dense, dark rye bread for dipping, and you have a meal that would have warmed a Viking family from the inside out, a true taste of the resilience and resourcefulness that defined the Norse world. Leaving the smoky, hearty depths of Viking scores behind, we now step into the sun-drenched courtyards of ancient Egypt, where the air would have been sweet with the scent of honey, nuts, and exotic flowers. This brings us to a dessert that is as timeless as the pyramids themselves, a cake so beloved that its recipe has been passed down through millennia: Egyptian basbousa. Imagine a treat so moist, so fragrant, and so delightfully sweet that it was likely enjoyed by pharaohs and commoners alike. A simple yet sophisticated confection that proves the ancient Egyptian pantry was far more diverse than just bread and beer. The story of basbousa is a fascinating tale of culinary migration and adaptation. While its exact origins in Egypt are hard to pin down, its primary ingredient, semolina flour, tells a significant part of the story. Semolina is a coarse flour made from durum wheat, a hard wheat variety that was cultivated in the ancient Middle East and North Africa. The name basbousa itself is derived from the Arabic word meaning just a kiss, a playful nod to its light, tender texture. However, many Egyptians also know it by its older, more traditional name, harissa, which means to break or to crush in Arabic, referring to the method of crushing the nuts for the topping, or perhaps the way the syrup-soaked cake simply breaks apart with a gentle touch. This dessert is a classic example of the rich pastry tradition that flourished in the region, with each country from Greece to Syria putting its own unique spin on it. But the Egyptian version, often enriched with coconut and perfumed with rose or orange blossom water, remains one of the most iconic and enduring. What makes basbousa so special is its incredible textural contrast. The base of the cake is made from semolina, which gives it a unique, slightly granular and satisfyingly hearty crumb that is completely different from cakes made with regular wheat flour. This dense texture acts as the perfect sponge for what is arguably the most important component, the syrup. The ancient Egyptians were masters of using natural sweeteners, and while they certainly had access to honey, the syrup for basbousa, known as khater, is typically made from sugar. This might suggest that the recipe as we know it today was perfected a bit later, after sugar became more widely traded. But the technique of soaking cakes in syrup is an ancient one that would have been accomplished with honey or date syrup in earlier times. This cold, flavored syrup is poured over the hot cake straight from the oven, and as it sits, the cake drinks it in, becoming unbelievably moist and sweet without ever being soggy. The flavorings are where the true magic of Egyptian basbousa comes to life. While a simple syrup is delicious, the addition of floral waters elevates it to something truly extraordinary. Rose water and orange blossom water are the most traditional choices, their delicate, perfumed aromas evoking the gardens along the Nile and connecting the dessert to a long history of using flowers in cuisine and medicine. A modern and now quintessentially Egyptian addition is desiccated coconut, which is often mixed right into the batter. When baked, the coconut toasts slightly, adding a wonderful nutty flavor and an extra layer of texture that makes every bite complex and intriguing. To bring this ancient sweet sensation into your own kitchen, the process is wonderfully straightforward. Begin by making the syrup so it has time to cool completely. In a small saucepan, combine 1½ cups of sugar with 1 cup of water and the juice of half a lemon. Bring this to a boil, stirring just until the sugar dissolves. Then reduce the heat and let it simmer for about 10 minutes until it slightly thickens. Remove it from the heat and stir in 1 tablespoon of rose water and 1 tablespoon of orange blossom water. Set this aside to cool. You can even place it in the refrigerator to speed up the process. For the cake, preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and generously butter an 8 by 8 or 9 by 9-inch baking pan. In a large mixing bowl, combine 2 cups of coarse semolina flour, 1 cup of desiccated coconut, 1 cup of granulated sugar, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and a ½ teaspoon of salt. In a separate bowl or a liquid measuring cup, whisk together 1 cup of plain yogurt, 1 cup of melted butter, and a ¼ cup of milk. Pour the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients and mix until just combined. The batter will be very thick, more like a paste than a typical cake batter. Spread this batter evenly into your prepared pan, using a spatula or your hands to press it down firmly and smooth the top. Using a sharp knife, score the surface into diamond or square shapes. This isn't just for decoration, it makes it much easier to cut after baking. Bake for 30 to 40 minutes until the top is a deep golden brown. The moment you take the cake out of the oven, immediately pour the cold syrup evenly over the hot cake. You will hear it sizzle and see it being absorbed instantly. Let the cake sit for at least 2 hours or even overnight to fully absorb all that syrupy goodness. Just before serving, tradition calls for placing 1 blanched almond in the center of each piece. The final result is a cake that is impossibly moist, fragrant with the essence of 1,000 flowers, and rich with the toasty flavors of semolina and coconut. Each tender, syrup-soaked piece is a direct and delicious link to the festive spirit of ancient Egypt. a dessert designed for sharing, for celebration, and for savoring the sweeter things in life. But for all their love of bold, public flavors like garum and communal stews, the ancient Romans also perfected the art of the elegant, home-cooked meal, and one of their most cherished creations was a dish that will feel wonderfully familiar to any modern brunch enthusiast, the patina. This was not the hard, seasoned coating on a well-used skillet. In the Roman culinary world, a patina was a sophisticated egg-based dish baked in a shallow earthenware dish of the same name, a direct ancestor of our modern frittattas, quiches, and savory custards. It was a versatile showcase for a cook's skill and the household's prosperity, able to be simple and frugal for a family supper or lavishly elaborate for a dinner party, making it a staple in recipe collections from famous gourmets like Apicius. The beauty of the patina was its incredible adaptability. At its most basic, it was a simple mixture of eggs beaten with milk or a little wine, perhaps with some fresh cheese and herbs stirred in, then baked until set. But this was merely the canvas. A skilled Roman cook could transform this humble base into a masterpiece with the addition of whatever was fresh and available. Leftover cooked meat, such as diced chicken or rabbit, was a common addition, as was a variety of seafood. Oysters, mussels, and sea urchins were considered particularly luxurious inclusions, their briny sweetness perfectly complementing the rich egg. For a vegetarian version, the patina could be studded with tender asparagus tips, earthy mushrooms, or sweet, peeled grapes. It was essentially the ultimate vehicle for leftovers and seasonal abundance, all bound together in a golden, savory cake. One of the most fascinating and uniquely Roman aspects of the patina was its seasoning, which often went far beyond simple salt and pepper. While herbs like lovage, rue, and parsley were common, the Romans had a particular fondness for a surprising combination of sweet and savory. A classic patina recipe might include a generous spoonful of honey to balance the saltiness of the cheese or fish sauce, along with a healthy dose of freshly ground black pepper. Another signature touch was a sprinkle of liquamen, the finest quality garum, drizzled over the top before baking to give it an intense umami kick. The final dish was a complex symphony of flavors: salty, sweet, savory, and spicy, all at once, a testament to the Roman palate that adored bold, contrasting tastes in every bite. To bring this ancient Roman classic into your kitchen, you can create a simple yet stunning patina that honors its spirit. Preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit and generously butter a 9-inch pie dish or ceramic baking dish. In a large bowl, whisk together 8 large eggs, 1 cup of whole milk, and a 1/4 cup of a rich, grated hard cheese like Pecorino Romano or Parmigiano Reggiano. To this, add 1 cup of cooked and chopped seasonal vegetables. Asparagus and mushrooms are wonderfully authentic choices. For a more luxurious version, you could add 1/2 cup of flaked, cooked white fish or a handful of small, cooked shrimp. Season the mixture with 1 tablespoon of honey, 1 teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper, a 1/2 teaspoon of dried oregano, and a tablespoon of chopped fresh parsley. Whisk everything together until well combined, then pour the mixture into your prepared dish. Bake for 25 to 30 minutes or until the patina is puffed, golden brown around the edges, and completely set in the center. For the authentic Roman finish, remove it from the oven and immediately drizzle a teaspoon of high-quality fish sauce or a tablespoon of melted anchovy paste mixed with olive oil over the top. Let it cool for a few minutes before slicing it into wedges. The result is a dish that is simultaneously simple and sophisticated, the creamy, comforting eggs providing a perfect backdrop for the savory vegetables and the complex, umami-rich finish from the garum. It's a taste that feels both ancient and surprisingly modern, a delicious reminder that the desire to gather around a table and share a satisfying, home-cooked meal is a tradition that truly transcends time. From the rich, egg-based comfort of a Roman patina, we travel to a simpler, yet no less profound, cornerstone of the ancient Greek table, a humble bowl of lentil soup. In a civilization that celebrated athletic ideals and philosophical debate, this was the food that fueled the thinkers and the laborers, a dish of such fundamental nourishment that it was celebrated by writers and enjoyed by citizens from every walk of life. The Greek version of this soup, known as fake or fakes, was a masterpiece of minimalist cooking, proving that with just a handful of ingredients and a little time, one could create a meal that was both deeply satisfying and incredibly virtuous. The lentil itself was held in high esteem by the ancient Greeks. It was a crop that thrived in their rocky soil, providing a reliable and affordable source of protein, fiber, and essential minerals. Unlike the luxurious meats and fish enjoyed by the elite, lentils were the food of the people, a democratic staple that sustained the armies, the philosophers, and the families who built the city-states. Its importance was even reflected in their language and culture. The famous Cynic philosopher Diogenes was said to have lived on little more than lentils and water, a testament to his ideals of simplicity and self-sufficiency. A bowl of this soup was more than just a meal. It was a symbol of humility, resilience, and intellectual clarity. The ancient Greek method for preparing this soup was like the Viking scores, an exercise in patience and building flavor through slow, gentle heat. It began with the holy trinity of their peasant cuisine: lentils, onions, and garlic. A clay pot would be placed over a low fire, and chopped onions would be gently softened in a generous glug of olive oil, the liquid gold that was the true heart of their diet. Then minced garlic would be added, its pungent aroma filling the air before the rinsed lentils were stirred in, each pebble-like legume coated in the fragrant oil. Water would be added, and the pot would be left to simmer for an hour or more, the lentils slowly breaking down and thickening the broth into a creamy, porridge-like consistency. The final crucial touch was a splash of vinegar, often a simple red wine vinegar. This wasn't just for flavor, it was a moment of culinary brilliance. The sharp acidity of the vinegar cut through the earthy richness of the lentils, brightening the entire dish and adding a layer of complexity that made the simple soup taste far more sophisticated than its ingredients would suggest. It was typically seasoned with nothing more than salt and perhaps a bundle of fresh herbs like oregano or thyme, tied together and removed before serving, leaving behind their subtle aromatic essence. To recreate this ancient Greek staple in your modern kitchen is to connect with a tradition of wholesome, honest eating. Start by rinsing 1 cup of brown or green lentils, checking for any small stones. In a heavy pot, heat a 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil over medium heat. Add 1 large yellow onion, finely chopped, and sauté until it is soft and translucent, about 5 to 7 minutes. Add 3 cloves of minced garlic and cook for another minute until fragrant. Stir in the rinsed lentils, coating them in the oil, then pour in 4 cups of vegetable broth or water. Bring the soup to a boil, then immediately reduce the heat to low, cover the pot, and let it simmer gently for about 45 minutes to an hour, until the lentils are very tender and have started to break down, thickening the soup. Stir it occasionally to prevent sticking. Once the lentils are soft, season the soup generously with salt and freshly ground black pepper. Now for the authentic Greek finish, stir in 2 tablespoons of good red wine vinegar. This addition is non-negotiable. It transforms the soup completely. Ladle the steaming soup into deep bowls. The final, essential step is another generous drizzle of your finest extra virgin olive oil over the top of each serving, along with a sprinkle of dried oregano. For a truly authentic experience, serve it with a slice of crusty bread and a few Kalamata olives on the side. The first spoonful is a revelation: the creamy, earthy lentils, the sharp tang of the vinegar, and the rich, fruity olive oil creating a perfect harmony of flavors that is both profoundly comforting and incredibly vibrant. It's a bowl of history that tastes just as relevant and delicious today as it did on the slopes of Mount Olympus 2,000 years ago. leaving the simple, virtuous comfort of Greek lentil soup behind. We now journey even further back in time to the very epicenter of ancient urban life, the bustling, sun-baked city of Babylon. Here in the heart of Mesopotamia, we discover a dish that showcases a culinary sophistication that will truly astound you. This isn't just a simple stew. It's a perfectly balanced, deeply flavorful masterpiece recorded on a 4,000-year-old cuneiform tablet, making it one of the world's oldest known written recipes. This is tahu, a vibrant beet and lamb stew that reveals the Babylonians weren't just inventors of writing and law. They were brilliant, intuitive cooks with a palate for complex, harmonious flavors. The name itself, tahu, likely refers to the deep crimson beetroot that gives the stew its spectacular color. But this dish is about so much more than one vegetable. What makes this recipe so remarkable is its incredible balance of flavors, a principle that feels utterly modern. The ancient cook was instructed to achieve a perfect equilibrium between the rich, savory fat of the lamb, the earthy sweetness of the beets and leeks, the sharp acidity provided by vinegar and beer, and the warm, aromatic depth of a sophisticated spice blend. This wasn't mere sustenance, it was a deliberate, thoughtful act of creating a multi-layered sensory experience in a single pot, a concept that would be right at home in any contemporary gourmet kitchen. The foundation of tahu is, of course, lamb, the prized meat of Mesopotamia, often from the shoulder or leg, cut into hearty chunks, but the true liquid soul of the stew is beer. The Babylonians were legendary brewers, and they used their everyday, slightly sour, unfiltered beer not just for drinking, but as a fundamental cooking liquid. This practice was a stroke of genius. The beer didn't just add moisture, it contributed a malty, tangy complexity that tenderized the meat and provided a wonderful counterpoint to the richness of the lamb and the sweetness of the vegetables. It acts much like a good red wine would in a modern French stew, deglazing the pot and forming the foundation of a deeply flavorful sauce. The vegetable lineup is a colorful testament to the Babylonian garden. Beets are the star, their brilliant red juice staining the entire stew a magnificent royal purple. Alongside them, the recipe calls for leeks and onions, alliums that provide a sweet, savory backbone, and a generous handful of fresh herbs like cilantro and mint, which would have been added at the end for a burst of fresh, aromatic lift. But the final, defining touch is the spice mix. The recipe specifically calls for cumin and coriander, spices that were highly valued trade goods, along with dried shallots and garlic, all ground together into a potent powder. This blend would have been stirred in towards the end of cooking, perfuming the entire stew with a warm, earthy, and citrusy fragrance that is the unmistakable signature of ancient Mesopotamian cuisine. To bring this 4,000-year-old recipe to life in your own kitchen, you can follow a modernized but deeply faithful interpretation. Start with 2 pounds of lamb shoulder, cut into 1-inch cubes and pat them dry. Season generously with salt. In a heavy Dutch oven, heat a tablespoon of rendered sheep's tail fat or olive oil, and brown the lamb in batches until you have a beautiful, fond, rich crust on the bottom of the pot. Remove the lamb and set it aside. In the same pot, add 3 leeks washed thoroughly and sliced and 1 large onion chopped. Cook until they are soft and beginning to caramelize. Now for the liquid, pour in 1 bottle of a good malty brown ale or a sour beer. This is your modern stand-in for the ancient Babylonian brew. Use a wooden spoon to scrape up all those brown bits from the bottom of the pot. Return the lamb to the pot and add enough water or beef stock to just cover the meat. Bring this to a simmer, then reduce the heat to low, cover, and let it cook gently for about 1 hour until the lamb is starting to become tender. Next, prepare your beets. You'll need 3 or 4 medium-sized beets, peeled and cut into large chunks. Add these to the stew, along with a large handful of chopped fresh cilantro stems. Let the stew continue to simmer, uncovered now, for another 30 to 45 minutes, until the beets are tender and the lamb is succulent. the beets will bleed their gorgeous color into the broth, creating that signature tahu hue. For the spice mix, in a small dry skillet, toast 1 tablespoon of coriander seeds and 2 teaspoons of cumin seeds until fragrant. Grind them in a mortar and pestle or a spice grinder along with 1 teaspoon of dried minced onion and 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. Stir this freshly ground spice mix into the stew. Finally, just before serving, stir in a 1/4 cup of red wine vinegar for that essential sharp acidity and a large handful of chopped fresh mint and cilantro leaves. Ladle the stew into deep bowls. The final result is a breathtakingly beautiful and complex dish: the rich, gamey lamb, the sweet, earthy beets, the tangy beer broth, and the warm, aromatic spices all coming together in a single harmonious bite. It's a taste that is both ancient and surprisingly contemporary, a direct line to the sophisticated palate of a Babylonian cook that proves some flavor combinations are truly timeless. Now imagine the aroma of corn steaming over a hot fire, mingling with the scent of roasted chili peppers and rich, seasoned meat, a fragrance that would have filled the air of a bustling Aztec market or a quiet household kitchen preparing for a festival. This brings us to one of the most enduring and beloved foods of Mesoamerica, the ancient Aztec tamal. Far more than just a convenient meal, tamales were a cornerstone of Aztec society, a food imbued with deep cultural, religious, and practical significance. Wrapped in their own natural packaging, they were the original portable feast carried by warriors, traders, and travelers, and offered as sacred sustenance to the gods themselves in elaborate religious ceremonies. The foundation of every authentic tamal is masa, the same dough we used for atole, made from nixtamalized corn. This process, as you'll recall, involves treating dried corn kernels with an alkaline solution like lime water, which softens them and makes their nutrients more available. The treated kernels, now called hominy or nixtamal, are then ground into a soft, pliable dough. For the Aztecs, this was a daily labor, often performed by women kneeling at a metate, a large stone grinding slab, using a handheld stone roller called a mano. The rhythmic grinding was a familiar sound in every home, transforming hard corn into a fragrant, moist dough that was the very heart of their cuisine. This masa is what gives the tamal its signature tender, slightly springy texture and its profound, earthy corn flavor that is utterly distinct from any wheat-based dough. While a plain tamal made from just masa and water was a common, filling staple, special occasions called for far more elaborate fillings. The Aztec pantheon of ingredients provided a spectacular array of possibilities. Beans, both black and red, were a frequent and nutritious filling, often mashed and seasoned with aromatic epazote. For those who could afford it, meat was a true luxury. Turkey was the most common domesticated bird, and its rich, dark meat would be stewed with chilies and herbs. Wild game like duck, deer, rabbit, or even iguana might also find its way into a festival tamal, each adding its own unique flavor. Vegetables were also celebrated, a filling of roasted squash blossoms, huitlacoche, the delicious corn fungus considered a delicacy, or wild mushrooms created a luxurious vegetarian option. The seasonings were always bold, relying on the Aztec trinity of flavor: chilies for heat, achiote for color and earthiness, and fresh herbs like cilantro and the anise-scented hoja santa leaf for aromatic complexity. The wrapping and cooking process is where the tamal's ingenious design truly shines. The Aztecs didn't have parchment paper or aluminum foil. They used the perfect biodegradable packaging provided by nature, corn husks. The long, fibrous husks from the same ears of corn were soaked in warm water to make them pliable. These husks not only contained the dough during cooking, but also imparted a subtle, sweet corn aroma to the masa as it steamed. The shaped tamales were then carefully arranged in a large, deep pot called an olla, often set on a rack of corn cobs to elevate them above a layer of boiling water. The pot was covered with more husks or a cloth lid to trap the steam, creating a gentle, enveloping heat that cooked the tamales evenly without making them wet or soggy. This slow steaming process, which could take over an hour, transformed the soft masa into a firm, cake-like consistency while melding the flavors of the filling and the wrapper into a cohesive, delicious whole. You can easily recreate this ancient tradition in your own kitchen and experience the magic of unwrapping your own homemade tamal. Start by sourcing dried corn husks from any Latin American market. Soak a dozen of them in a bowl of very hot water for at least an hour until they are soft and flexible. For the filling, poach 2 boneless, skinless chicken breasts in well-salted water until cooked through. Then shred the meat with 2 forks. In a skillet, heat a tablespoon of oil and sauté 1 chopped white onion until soft. Add 2 minced garlic cloves and cook for another minute. Then stir in the shredded chicken, half a cup of your favorite salsa verde or red salsa, and a 1/4 cup of chopped fresh cilantro. Cook for a few minutes until heated through, then set aside. For the masa, you can use 2 cups of store-bought masa harina for tamales. This is the dried version of the dough, specifically formulated for the purpose. In a large bowl, mix the masa harina with 2 teaspoons of baking powder and 1½ teaspoons of salt. In a separate bowl, beat 1 cup of vegetable shortening or lard with a hand mixer until it is light and fluffy. This step is crucial for creating a tender, not dense, tamal. Gradually beat in the masa harina mixture alternately with about 2 cups of warm chicken broth, until you have a soft, spreadable dough that is the consistency of thick peanut butter. To assemble, take a soaked corn husk and pat it dry. Spread about a 1/4 cup of the masa dough into the center of the husk, using the back of a spoon to create a rectangle about a 1/4 inch thick, leaving a border at the top and bottom. Spoon a generous tablespoon of the chicken filling down the center of the masa. Carefully fold the sides of the husk over the filling, then fold up the bottom narrow end. The top remains open. Stand the tamales upright, folded side down in a steamer basket set over a pot of simmering water. Cover the pot tightly and steam for about an hour to an hour and a half, adding more boiling water to the pot as needed. The tamal is done when the masa pulls away easily from the husk. Unwrap one and behold your creation. A tender, steamed package of corn dough enveloping a spicy, savory filling. The experience of peeling back the husk to reveal the steaming tamal within is a ritual that connects you directly to the ancient Aztec world, a delicious reminder of the timeless human desire to wrap, steam, and share good food. But as we leave the world of the Aztec tamal behind, we find ourselves transported to the bustling, noisy, and incredibly vibrant streets of a modern Chinese morning, where the sizzle of a griddle and the enticing aroma of a thin, crispy crepe signal the start of the day for millions. This is jianbing, a beloved Chinese street food with a history that stretches back over 2,000 years, making it one of the world's oldest and most enduring fast breakfasts. Its origins are steeped in legend, tied to one of China's most famous military strategists. During the Three Kingdoms period, the brilliant Zhu Zhilang found his army stranded without woks to cook their meals. In a moment of sheer ingenuity, he ordered his soldiers to use their metal shields as improvised griddles, mixing water with whatever flour they had on hand to create a simple, thin batter. They cooked it on the shields over open fires, creating a portable, filling flatbread that could fuel a soldier on the march. This clever field ration, known then as jianbing guozi, or fried pancake, was so effective and delicious that it survived the battlefield and became a staple of civilian life, evolving over centuries into the complex and beloved street food we know today. The magic of a perfect jianbing lies in its unique, multi-textured construction, a culinary feat performed with breathtaking speed and precision by street vendors. It begins with the batter, which is far more complex than a simple wheat flour mix. Authentic jianbing batter is a finely tuned combination of mung bean flour and wheat flour, with the mung bean providing a characteristic slight elasticity and a beautiful golden hue when cooked. This batter is poured onto a large circular griddle in a perfect thin spiral, then swiftly smoothed into an impossibly thin, even circle with a special wooden tool. An egg is cracked directly onto the cooking crepe and quickly broken and spread across its entire surface, becoming inseparable from the batter as it sets. While the bottom gets crispy, the vendor artfully sprinkles a handful of finely chopped scallions and fresh cilantro over the top, followed by a generous brush of two key sauces: salty, fermented yellow soybean paste and sweet, thick hoisin sauce. The final signature touch is the placement of a crispy, fried wonton wrapper or a sheet of baozi, a super light, deep-fried cracker, right in the center. Then comes the masterful fold. Using two thin spatulas, the vendor deftly folds the flexible edges of the crepe over the crunchy center in a specific sequence, creating a neat, portable rectangular package that is simultaneously soft, crispy, savory, and sweet. The first bite is an explosion of contrasting textures: the tender, eggy crepe, the fresh burst of herbs, the salty, sweet sauce, and the incredible shattering crunch from the fried center. It's a perfectly balanced meal in your hand, a testament to the ancient Chinese understanding of harmony in food. To capture this ancient street magic in your own kitchen, you can create a simplified yet utterly delicious version. For the batter, whisk together half a cup of mung bean flour, a quarter cup of all-purpose wheat flour, and a quarter teaspoon of salt. Gradually whisk in 1 1/4 cups of water until you have a smooth, thin, crepe-like batter with no lumps. Let this rest for at least 15 minutes. Heat a non-stick skillet or a well-seasoned cast iron griddle over medium heat and lightly brush it with vegetable oil. Pour a ladleful of batter into the center and quickly tilt the pan in a circular motion to spread it into a large, thin circle. Crack an egg directly onto the center of the crepe and gently break the yolk, spreading the egg evenly across the entire surface with the back of a spoon or a spatula. Sprinkle with a handful of chopped scallions and cilantro. As the edges begin to lift and the bottom becomes golden and slightly crispy, carefully slide a spatula underneath to loosen it. Now drizzle a teaspoon of hoisin sauce and a teaspoon of yellow soybean paste or more hoisin if you can't find it over the center. Place a crispy fried wonton wrapper or even a handful of store-bought fried onions in the middle. Using your spatula, fold the two opposite sides of the crepe inward over the filling, then fold the remaining two sides over to form a square package. Flip it seams side down for a moment to seal, then transfer it to a plate. The result is a warm, customizable, and deeply satisfying breakfast that connects you to a 2,000-year-old tradition of culinary ingenuity, a perfect handheld feast that proves some of the best ideas are truly timeless. After that journey through the bustling streets of ancient China with Jianbing, we find ourselves seeking something cool and soothing, a drink that feels like a respite from the heat. Our next stop takes us to the heart of the Indian subcontinent for a beverage that is both ancient and eternally refreshing: lassi. This yogurt-based drink is far more than a simple thirst quencher. It is a cornerstone of Ayurvedic wisdom, a digestive aid, and a daily ritual that has been nourishing people for thousands of years. Its origins as deeply woven into the fabric of Indian life as the rivers that flow through its plains. The story of lassi begins with dahi, the traditional Indian yogurt that forms its creamy, tangy base. The practice of fermenting milk is ancient in India, a crucial method of preservation in a hot climate long before refrigeration. But this fermentation was recognized as more than just practical. It was profoundly beneficial. In Ayurveda, the ancient Indian system of medicine, yogurt is considered a cooling food, one that helps balance the body's internal heat or pitta. It is also packed with probiotics which aid digestion and promote gut health, a fact modern science has only recently confirmed, but one that Indian healers have understood for millennia. Lassi was the delicious vehicle for these benefits, a way to dilute the yogurt's richness with water and enhance it with ingredients that served specific purposes for the body and the palate. What's fascinating about lassi is its beautiful duality, represented by its two primary forms, sweet and salty. Each variety serves a different role and is enjoyed at different times. The salty version, known as namkeen lassi or sometimes chas, is the ultimate digestive. It is typically consumed during or right after a meal. Its ingredients are functional and savory. Water is blended with yogurt and a pinch of salt to replenish electrolytes, but the true magic comes from the tempering of spices. Whole cumin seeds are often lightly toasted to release their earthy, smoky essence before being ground and added to the drink. Fresh mint leaves might be blended in for their cooling properties, and a tiny pinch of asafoetida or hing is frequently added for its renowned power to calm the digestive tract and prevent gas. This is a drink of pure wellness, a liquid remedy that is both bracing and incredibly satisfying. On the opposite end of the spectrum is the sweet lassi, a celebration in a glass. This is the version that has captured hearts around the world, often enjoyed as a treat, a dessert, or a cooling refreshment on a sweltering afternoon. While a simple sweet lassi might just be yogurt, water, sugar, and perhaps a drop of rose water, the most famous iteration is mango lassi. This glorious drink celebrates the king of Indian fruits, the mango, blending its sweet, tropical pulp with the creamy yogurt into a smooth, decadent shake-like consistency. It's a perfect balance of tart and sweet, a luxurious indulgence that still carries all the probiotic goodness of its savory cousin. You can easily bring both of these ancient traditions into your own kitchen. For a classic savory cumin lassi, start by dry toasting 1 teaspoon of cumin seeds in a small skillet over medium heat until they become fragrant and darken just slightly. Grind them coarsely in a mortar and pestle or a spice grinder. In a blender, combine 1 cup of plain, whole milk yogurt with half a cup of cold water, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and half of your ground cumin. Blend until it's smooth and frothy. Pour it into a glass and garnish with a sprinkle of the remaining cumin and a few fresh mint leaves. The first sip is a revelation, cool, creamy, and tangy, with the warm, smoky punch of cumin and the refreshing finish of mint. It's a drink that truly feels like it's doing you good, settling the stomach and cooling the body from the inside out. For the sweet, celebratory mango lassi, the process is just as simple but feels like pure luxury. In your blender, combine 1 cup of ripe mango chunks, fresh or frozen, with 1 cup of plain yogurt, a 1/4 cup of cold water, 2 tablespoons of honey or sugar, and a pinch of cardamom if you have it. Cardamom adds a beautiful floral complexity that pairs perfectly with the mango. Blend on high until the mixture is completely smooth, velvety, and a beautiful sunshine yellow. Pour it into a tall glass, and if you're feeling fancy, garnish with a tiny pinch of saffron threads soaked in a teaspoon of warm milk, or simply a slice of fresh mango on the rim. This version is like drinking a cloud of tropical sunshine, immensely satisfying, refreshing, and a direct, delicious link to the ancient Indian joy of harnessing nature's sweetness. Whether you choose the savory or the sweet, a glass of lassi is a timeless taste of balance, a beverage that has been nourishing and delighting people for over 1,000 years. But to truly understand Fessengen, you must appreciate its 2 sole ingredients, each with a history as rich as the stew itself. First, there are the walnuts, which are not merely chopped but are ground for hours into a velvety, thick paste that forms the very foundation of the sauce. This isn't a task for a simple food processor. Traditionally, it was done with a heavy mortar and pestle, a labor of love that released the walnut's precious oils and created an impossibly smooth, deeply nutty base. Then there is the robiana or pomegranate molasses. This is not a modern syrup but an ancient reduction, made by slowly boiling down the juice of sour pomegranates until it transforms into a thick, tangy, and complex concentrate. This magical ingredient provides the defining sour note that balances the richness of the walnuts and the fat of the meat, a flavor so cherished in Persian cuisine that it has its own name, toroshi, the beautiful equilibrium between sweet and sour. These two elements, the earthy walnut and the bright pomegranate, are the heart of the dish, and their marriage in a single pot is a culinary concept that has been perfected over 1,000 years. The choice of protein is also deeply traditional. While modern versions often use chicken, the most luxurious and ancient preparations call for duck or even venison. Duck, with its rich, dark meat and higher fat content, stands up magnificently to the robust sauce, its flavor becoming more profound and gamey as it braises. The cooking process is a lesson in patience. The stew is never rushed. After a quick sear on the poultry to render fat and create a golden crust, the ground walnut paste is carefully toasted in the same pot. This step is absolutely critical. It deepens the nutty flavor, removing any raw taste and unlocking a toasty, profound depth that is the hallmark of a well-made fessengin. Then in goes the pomegranate molasses and enough water or stock to create a thick, simmering bath. The pot is then covered and left to cook over the lowest possible heat for at least 2 hours and often much longer. This long, slow simmering is non-negotiable. It allows the sharp tang of the pomegranate to mellow and integrate, the walnut oil to rise to the surface in a beautiful, shimmering layer, and the meat to become so tender it practically falls from the bone. You can bring the regal warmth of a Persian palace to your own table with this approachable yet authentic recipe. Start by seasoning 2 pounds of chicken thighs or duck legs generously with salt and pepper. In a heavy Dutch oven, heat 2 tablespoons of oil over medium-high heat and brown the meat on all sides until you achieve a deep golden crust. Remove the meat and set it aside. In the same pot, add 1 finely chopped large yellow onion and sauté until it is soft and translucent. Now add 2½ cups of very finely ground walnuts. Toast them with the onion, stirring constantly for a good 5 to 7 minutes. You must watch them carefully to prevent burning, but this toasting is what will give your stew its incredible, nutty foundation. Once the walnuts are fragrant and a shade darker, return the meat to the pot. Pour in 1 cup of pomegranate molasses and 3 cups of chicken stock. The sauce will be very dark and thick. Add 1 teaspoon of turmeric, half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and 2 tablespoons of sugar to balance the intense sourness. Bring the liquid to a boil, then immediately reduce the heat to the lowest setting, cover the pot, and let it simmer gently for 2 hours. Stir it occasionally to prevent the walnuts from sticking. In the last 10 minutes of cooking, stir in 2 tablespoons of fresh pomegranate seeds, which will add a wonderful little burst of fresh juice and texture. The final stew should be a deep, dark brown with the walnut oil glistening on the surface. The consistency will be thick and velvety, coating the back of a spoon. Serve your fessengin over a bed of fluffy, saffron-infused basmati rice. The first spoonful is a revelation: the rich, creamy nuttiness, the complex sweet and sour tang, and the impossibly tender meat all coming together in a symphony of flavors that is both ancient and utterly timeless, a taste of Persian hospitality that has welcomed guests for centuries. Now imagine yourself in a lush, humid Mayan village where the air is thick with the smoke of a cooking fire and the earthy scent of roasted seeds. Our journey into ancient foods now takes us to the very heart of the Yucatan Peninsula for a dip that is so much more than a simple appetizer. It is a living culinary artifact, a taste of the Maya worldview in a single, spectacular bite. This is sickle pak, a magnificent paste whose name translates simply to pumpkin seed sauce, but whose flavor profile is anything but simple. This ancient recipe, still prepared in nearly identical fashion today, showcases the Maya genius for creating profound, complex flavors from just a handful of local, roasted ingredients, transforming the humble pumpkin seed into a dip that is both rustic and sophisticated. To understand sickle pack is to understand the sacred role of the pumpkin, or is in Mayan culture. For the Maya, nothing from this vital squash was wasted. The flesh was eaten, the hard shell could be dried and used as a vessel, and the seeds within were a prized source of protein and fat. These seeds, known as pepitas, were not simply snack food. They were a fundamental ingredient, toasted and ground to thicken stews, to make ceremonial drinks, and of course to create this incredible dip. The other components were equally central to the Mayan diet. Tomatoes and chili peppers, both domesticated in Mesoamerica, provided the necessary acidity and heat. There were no imported lemons or onions. The sharpness came from the zac, a native shallot-like onion, and the explosive citrus punch from the juice of the bitter Seville orange, which grows abundantly in the region. Every single element was sourced from the surrounding jungle and milpa farms, making sickle pack a true taste of place. The traditional preparation method is a beautiful, sensory ritual that any home cook can replicate to capture the authentic spirit of the dish. It all begins with toasting, a step that cannot be rushed. 1 cup of raw, shelled pumpkin seeds is spread in a single layer on a dry comel or a heavy skillet over medium heat. They are stirred constantly until they begin to pop, dance, and emit a deeply nutty, toasted aroma. This process unlocks their hidden flavors and makes their brittle shells easy to remove. Once cooled, the seeds are rubbed between your hands or in a clean kitchen towel to shed their papery skins, a satisfying task that reveals the vibrant green pepitas within. These are then set aside. Next, 2 large, ripe tomatoes and a couple of cloves of garlic, still in their papery skins, are placed directly onto the hot surface. They are charred and blistered, turned occasionally until their skins are blackened and their interiors are soft and smoky. This charring is not a mistake. It is the secret to the dip's incredible depth, adding a layer of smokiness that is absolutely essential. Finally, a single habanero chili is quickly toasted just until it softens, infusing the air with its fruity, potent heat. The final act of creation is where the ancient meets the modern. Traditionally, all these charred, toasted ingredients would be ground by hand in a molkajit, a volcanic stone mortar and pestle. This method is highly recommended as the grinding action helps to release the natural oils from the seeds, creating a wonderfully coarse, textured paste. Start by grinding the peeled, toasted pumpkin seeds first, pounding them until they form a coarse meal. Then add the peeled, charred garlic and the habanero chili, grinding them into the seed base. Next, incorporate the charred tomatoes, mashing and grinding until you achieve a thick, rustic consistency. Finally, stir in the juice of 1 or 2 Seville oranges, or a combination of regular orange juice and lime juice if that's what you have, along with a generous handful of chopped cilantro and a pinch of salt. The result is a thick, speckled aromatic paste that is simultaneously nutty, smoky, tart, and spicy. To serve sickle pack as the Maya intended, present it in a bowl alongside a platter of freshly made, warm corn tortillas or crisp, raw vegetable sticks like jicama and cucumber. Each scoop is a journey. The initial crunch of the seeds gives way to the smoky sweetness of the tomato, which is then cut through by the sharp citrus and the slow building fire of the habanero. It is a dip that demands conversation, a centerpiece for sharing that connects you directly to the communal, earth-centered culinary traditions of the ancient Maya, proving that the most powerful flavors often come from the simplest, most honest ingredients. Leaving behind the vibrant, complex world of Mayan sickle pack, we now set sail on a much colder, more formidable sea, heading for the rugged fjords of Scandinavia. Here, amidst the longships and the legacy of fierce warriors, we discover a culinary technique that is a testament to Viking ingenuity and their intimate relationship with their harsh environment. Our final ancient food takes us to the very heart of Norse preservation, Viking gravlax. This isn't a dish born from elaborate feasts, but from pure, pragmatic necessity, a brilliant method of fermenting fish that allowed these legendary seafarers to carry nutritious, long-lasting protein on their epic voyages across the North Atlantic. The name itself, gravlax, tells the entire story. It comes from the Old Norse words grav, meaning grave or to dig, and lax, meaning salmon. Centuries before refrigeration, the Vikings would clean and fillet a freshly caught salmon, then bury it quite literally in a shallow pit dug above the tide line on the beach. The pit was first lined with birch bark to insulate it. Then the salmon was packed in a dry cure of coarse sea salt, which they had in abundance from evaporating seawater. But the true stroke of genius was what they foraged and added next. A generous amount of dill for its bright, herbal flavor and subtle preservative qualities, and sometimes a handful of sweet, wild berries to provide a counterpoint to the salt. The fish was then covered with more bark, weighed down with heavy stones to press out moisture, and left to ferment for anywhere from a few days to several weeks. The stones provided a constant, gentle pressure, forcing out the fish's internal water and allowing the salt and natural, wild yeasts to penetrate deep into the flesh, preserving it and creating a uniquely tangy, firm texture and a profoundly savory flavor. This was survival food at its most inventive, a way to harness the natural chemistry of salt, sugar, and pressure to create a stable, nutrient-dense staple. The modern version of gravlax, which you can easily create in your own kitchen, is a direct and delicious descendant of this ancient practice, though we've thankfully traded the beach burial for the more convenient environment of the refrigerator. The principles, however, remain exactly the same. It all begins with the absolute finest, freshest salmon you can find. A center-cut fillet with the skin on is ideal, as the skin helps contain the fish during the curing process and makes for easy slicing later. The cure is a simple, powerful trio: coarse kosher salt, sugar, and an abundance of fresh dill. The salt is the primary preserving agent, drawing out moisture and inhibiting bacterial growth. The sugar, while not strictly necessary for preservation, is crucial for balance. It mellows the harshness of the salt and encourages a subtle fermentation that gives gravlax its characteristic depth, far beyond mere salty salmon. The fresh dill is non-negotiable, its aromatic oils infusing the fish with that signature Scandinavian flavor that is fresh, grassy, and utterly distinctive. The process is one of the most rewarding in all of home cooking because it feels like a form of edible alchemy. To begin, mix together 1 cup of coarse kosher salt with half a cup of granulated sugar. You can add a tablespoon of crushed black peppercorns or even a teaspoon of crushed juniper berries for an extra layer of Viking-inspired flavor. Take your salmon fillet, which should be about 2 to 3 pounds, and place it skin side down on a large piece of plastic wrap set on a rimmed baking sheet. Pat it completely dry with paper towels. Now, pack the salt and sugar mixture onto every surface of the flesh side of the salmon, pressing it in to create a complete crust. Then take a massive bunch of fresh dill, at least 2 or 3 large bundles, and completely blanket the salmon, stems and all. The dill should form a thick, green carpet over the entire surface. Now for the most important Viking step, the pressure. Wrap the plastic wrap tightly around the salmon, enveloping it completely. Then, place another baking sheet or a flat board on top of the wrapped salmon. Finally, weigh it down. This is essential. Use cans of food, a heavy skillet, or even a clean brick wrapped in foil. The goal is significant, even pressure across the entire surface of the fish. Place this entire setup in your refrigerator for 48 to 72 hours. Every 12 hours or so, you'll notice liquid has been pulled out of the salmon. This is the lag. Simply open the package, baste the salmon with this liquid, and rewrap it. This ensures an even cure. After 3 days, the transformation is complete. Unwrap your creation, brush off all the dill and salt cure, and gently pat the surface dry. The salmon will be firmer to the touch and have a beautiful, translucent, coral-colored appearance. To serve this masterpiece of ancient preservation, use your sharpest knife to slice it paper thin on a slight bias, angling the blade toward the skin. Each slice should be cool, firm, and glistening. Traditional accompaniments are designed to complement its rich, salty, sweet flavor. Dense, dark rye bread or crisp, flatbread slathered with unsalted butter, a dollop of sharp, sweet mustard sauce, and perhaps some quick pickled cucumbers. The first bite is a revelation: the silky, dense texture of the fish, the clean taste of the sea, the perfume of the dill, and the perfect balance of salt and sugar. It's a taste that connects you directly to the pragmatic genius of the Vikings, a powerful reminder that some of the most exquisite culinary delights were born not from luxury, but from the sheer, brilliant will to survive and thrive. And there you have it, a culinary odyssey stretching from the barley fields of Mesopotamia to the steamy jungles of the Maya, a journey through 35 ancient foods that you can bring to life in your own kitchen today. We've baked bread alongside Sumerian bakers, sipped sacred brews with Egyptian priests, and seasoned our meals with the same potent fish sauce that fueled Roman legions. Each dish, from the hearty Viking skårs to the delicate Chinese bao, is more than just a list of ingredients. It's a story. It's a testament to human ingenuity, a reflection of how our ancestors used sheer creativity and the resources around them to not only survive, but to celebrate, to worship, and to connect with one another across the table. The most beautiful part of this entire journey is realizing that you don't need a time machine to taste history. These recipes are incredibly accessible. With a quick trip to a standard grocery store or a quick browse online for one or two specialty items like masa harina or pomegranate molasses, you can embark on your own edible archaeology project. These are not fragile museum pieces locked behind glass. They are vibrant, forgiving, and deeply satisfying projects for any level of home cook. Whether you're simmering a pot of Greek lentil soup on a weeknight or spending a weekend afternoon shaping tamales or curing your own gravlax, you are participating in a tradition that is thousands of years old. You're not just making dinner, you're keeping a story alive, one delicious bite at a time. So I want to extend a challenge and an invitation to you. Pick one of these ancient foods that spoke to you. Maybe it was the creamy comfort of Persian fesenjan, the bright crunch of Egyptian dukkha, or the simple, sustaining power of Inca cancha. Find a recipe, gather your ingredients, and give it a try. Let your kitchen fill with the aromas of the past, taste the history, share it with your friends and family, and tell them the story behind the meal. And then I absolutely want to hear all about your experiments. Come down to the comment section and tell me which ancient food you tried to make. Was it a triumphant success, a hilarious learning experience? Did you put your own modern twist on a Babylonian stew? Your stories are what make this community so incredible, and I read every single one. Your culinary time travel starts now.